I'll call to order the July 12th meeting of the Village of Weston Plan Commission and the ET's Zoning Committee. Roll call and declaration of a quorum by Secretary Parker for the Plan Commission. Valerie, are you here?
Yep, I'm here.
Thank you.
Yep. So Plan Commission, White,
Here?
Winell,
Here.
Cronin,
Here.
Current,
Here.
Jordan,
Here.
Marshall,
Here.
Mumper,
Here.
Maloney,
Here.
and Zagami. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to call for the alternates or not, but
Okay. We're learning.
They're here.
okay. And then
Roll call.
oh,
Declaration of quorum of the ETZ committee. Valerie?
okay. Christensen,
Here.
Paul,
Here.
Gerndt,
Here.
Olson,
Here.
Minell,
Here.
and White.
Here. Item 4, nomination and election of joint village and town ETC committee chair, vice chair, and secretary. This is B for the ETZ. Anyone have a nomination for the chair?
I nominate Milt, I guess.
Okay. Is there a second for that nomination?
I'll second that.
Second by Manel. Any other nominations? Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye. ETZ. Aye. All opposed? So carried. Milt, you're the chairman. You can take over your part of the meeting.
A nomination for vice chair for the ETZ committee. Who's the vice chair now?
I think I am. Yeah. Except you never miss a meeting.
Is there a nomination for vice chair? ETZ committee?
I'll nominate Manel.
Any other nominations? Is there a second that nomination?
I second.
All in favor of the motion to have Steve as vice chair, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Steve, congratulations. Nominations for secretary to ETZ. Oh, we had a secretary.
But that's Valerie unless
Valerie.
somebody wants to take minutes.
I don't think so. Valerie is a fine person to do that.
Good, I agree.
Come on.
I think it's by consensus, right?
Yeah, just verifying.
Okay. Item 5, announcement of any possible or perceived conflict of interest. Is there any member of either the Plan Commission or the ETZ that feels they have a conflict of interest? Please disclose it now, and in particular items that are coming up further on the agenda. If so, if there are conflicts, the ETZ and the Plan Commission will determine whether you should either recuse yourself or abstain. Anyone? Okay. Hearing none. Item 6, adoption of the 2021-2022 Plan Commission Rules of Procedure. Jen, do you want to lead off on that?
Sure. So we discussed this a little bit last month. You asked for me to bring these rules and procedures forward this month. So we have not adopted them since, I think, 2019. I think that was the last time. So I updated them and placed them for your review here for potentially adopting tonight. These come from basically the books that I just handed out to y'all from the Plan Commissioner's handbook. So it's pretty much the same one that's in there. There's a few changes just for how we tend to handle our meetings here.
I have a question.
Okay.
It mentions about Robert's Rules of Order, but it doesn't mention which edition.
Okay.
That's one thing. And also the village is working on a parliamentary procedure, short little detail, which is neither Robert's Rules of Order nor any other formal written parliamentary procedure. So if we adopt this particular thing, we need to specify which version of Roberts, at least that's my opinion. And or if village develops a parliamentary procedure, finally adopts that parliamentary procedure document, would that supersede this, or would we have to do this over again?
So a plan commission is a little bit different than other committees in the village. So you do have some of your own functions that are outside of what would be underneath the umbrella of the village. So that would be totally up to the commission.
That was my questions. Anyone else?
What specifically would be, is different than what, like versus based on how we do things?
There wasn't anything major. I don't even know right now offhand. I think it was the order of business. I can bring it back if you want a red line version of it. So,
I don't see anything that's glaring. It just would be nice to know what is different for the changes.
What are we trying to accomplish with this? Just a question.
Sure, go ahead.
I'm just curious. I mean, we've looked at this once before, or twice before. There was questions on whether we need to sign something and what, by adding this in is another layer of bureaucracy, or what are we trying to accomplish or explain that isn't part of state statute, I guess, or if we're following state statute, why do we need to have it outlined like this?
I think Jen is following the request of the plan commission that was made at one of the meetings that just be brought back.
the last meeting,
Right.
Joe Jordan actually asked for it to be brought back. So it does offer some, basically gives us some guidance on attendance. So how to handle if we've got people who do not attend often. It also gives us some guidance on conflict of interest, how to replace members if somebody either, leaves, something happens. It just gives us some parameters. Totally up to you guys. I was asked to bring it back, so I brought it back.
Are we bringing it back, or was your concern?
Oh, Mr. Garrett, go ahead.
Joe, did you want to bring it back so we have a copy of it?
No, the thing that I asked to be eliminated was the official signature on the code of conduct sheet that was part of the original proposal, so that was eliminated at the last meeting. The rest of
It
the,
wasn't brought forward at all.
right, so the rest of the rules, as I perceive them, are good operating procedures. So I'm good with making a motion to adopt these.
Is that your motion, Mr. Jordan?
It would be.
We have a motion by Mr. Jordan to adopt as presented.
I'll second the motion.
Second by Cronin.
On the question.
On the question.
Site inspections, indicates that site inspections shall be performed by village staff. Shouldn't it be licensed? Wisconsin village staff? Correct me if I'm wrong, but plumbers, electricians, building inspectors, aren't they also licensed by the state?
Probably a good question or is
Scott's out there.
Scott. Mr. Tatro, please. Explain.
I'm not familiar with the document.
Well, Mr. Manel's question is about licensed staff doing site inspections. It's in this document.
I guess depending what the site, what they're inspecting for. They're credentialed for certain areas of inspections. So for myself, I'm credentialed for anything 1 and 2 family and anything commercial electrical or industrial electrical.
Plumbing also?
This is in,
Not for commercial.
this is in reference to like a rezone for site inspections for conditional uses, things that come before this committee or things that you have us look into. That's what site inspection is.
No site, no commercial or any state credentialing would be required. It would be a site inspection by staff for a rezone, like she said. So there's no trades involved in an inspection like that.
Maybe I can explain it a little bit better. As far as I'm concerned, it's if any one of the members of the plan commission wants to go to a site and take a look at it, it's not because the plan commission is gonna expect electrical, plumbing, heating, and that. First off, none of us have the knowledge or the skill or experience to do that. It's if, hey, let's go take a look at this site and see what it looks like. And that's my understanding of a site inspection, not necessarily to make sure the plumbing's doesn't run uphill if you're trying to get rid of waste. For me, it's like if, as a group, and this it tells us that we can't have more than so many, otherwise we have to put it as an agenda.
Right.
The site has to be available for public to attend also. And I think that's the main reason is that site inspections are not done in violation of an open record, open meeting law.
And the site may have to be analyzed just to see, does the site drop off drastically, contour of the site?
I'm just wishing that there was more clarification to that then, that it should be for, like you indicated. I'm just recommending that we come up with some verbiage then for that. I mean, I know that state requires certain licenses for certain inspections, and this is kind of generic.
This is in regard to everything that this commission does. So a site inspection would be as part of the application process. We're supposed to write a report for you all, and it's good if we go and look at it. So that's
Right, but
part of it.
if I was building tonight and submitting my application, I would hope that Scott being licensed would be the one, analyzing my electrical or whatever.
Right, but you guys don't deal
We
with
don't do
any
that.
electrical or anything
I
like
know.
this, so this, and this also goes to, these are creating the parameters for basically you guys as commissioners. So we heard last month that when certain members got on, they didn't necessarily know what their roles were. And we don't always go over that because depending on who comes on when and where, this is something, a document that we can provide, and then they can ask questions. And then everyone's on the same page.
Yeah, so I read through the presentation, the video presentation, and the explanation for a novice coming on to this commission would be very helpful. So having some basic guidelines is a good thing. Without, to your point, Steve, without getting into the weeds and the detail of what is proposed for that particular site, whether or not it meets code, it's more about the ability for us as individuals to go do that and formulate our own thoughts and ideas of whether or not this is a good use.
I'm just pointing out that when it says site inspections by staff, I'm questioning, shouldn't it be someone who's knowledgeable in looking at the site? And I'm just questioning that, but I'm only one voice, so whatever.
The zoning code gives any member of the department the ability to enforce, because it falls down on me as the zoning administrator and my designees. And a long time ago, Scott was designated, Roman is, so basically Emily, any of us can go do a site inspection for something like a rezone or something with nuisance. We're not gonna go and do electrical inspections or things like that. That just falls on Scott, so.
And what I don't want to get,
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
I was gonna say, so what I don't want to have created or happen to us is quasi commission that's looking at and deciding whether or not something should be questioned as to whether or not it's doing something illegal, or, I mean, this is really about looking at things that are on our agenda and not out there looking for trouble or problems.
That could be considered, you're talking about ex parte communication, you're talking about walking quorums, you're talking about borderline close to open records, open meeting if we have more than, if we have 4 people attending the site at the same time. This is trying to keep the commission from having a problem where we, oops, all 4 of us are here, one of us had better leave. Because first off, it wasn't noticed. And that's my understanding of that particular site inspection process. Gail, you had a question.
Yeah, the 24-hour for a special meeting would essentially preclude the public from participating because not everybody checks your, looking for plan commission. Is it possible to make that longer or is what?
That's a state.
State
law.
statute.
A state statute, and that only happens in real special circumstances. We don't do it very often. But
I can't think of something that would need to be taken care of in 24 hours.
there have been, it's been more at the board level than the plan commission level, but there have been meetings. It's 24 hours.
It's very rare.
Okay.
Excuse me, Steve was next.
I was just gonna say, Steve, I think it's more or less just laying a procedure down that if any of us, there was an item on the agenda that all of us wanted to go take a look at before we came to the meeting, that there's something there that says this is how it needs to be done. And I think that's what it's, I don't think it's specifically stating we're gonna look at electrical or plumbing or anything like that. That's not the way I read it, at least.
My understanding also. Mr. Garrett.
Well, it states right here, inspection shall be performed by village staff if desired, no more than 1 member of the commission can accompany staff on site. So it's not like you have a group of people there either.
But yes, Mr. Donner.
I was just gonna say, I guess I agree. I think it's a case of laying out that staff would be the eyes or the eyes for the plan commission to answer some questions. I can think of the example when we're looking at conditional use permit over near Vortex Tool, between that and the material processing going on between or on the property next door. So in cases of information gathering for this body. And if there is a certain expertise that's required on that, I would certainly expect that the properly certified person would make any recommendations or commentary on those specific items.
And also it mentions in there in the 3rd paragraph, it can be performed by the entire plan commission. If the site inspection is posted as a public meeting and the public is allowed to come to the site. So yeah, we as a plan commission, but then it has to be posted. And if the owner doesn't want the public there, we can't have the meeting there. At least that's my understanding of what it says.
Right, and item 2 is site inspections may also be performed by individual members of the plan commission. No more than 3 members shall visit at any one given time. So it allows me the opportunity to, maybe I'll just do a drive-by. Or maybe it's somebody that I know that's asking me something specific about it. I just want to have the ability to.
Except that if it's related to a hearing.
Exactly, yeah, so, right.
Thank you. That's true. Any other questions? Mr. Marnell? Kind of, sort of answered or?
Kind of. I just don't, I'm not grasping why we need to have this if we're already under state statute. That's the only thing that I'm struggling with.
It's been my experience that there was a lot of things that are covered under state statute that very few people actually read the state statutes on.
I think it's just good to have an informational binder, what our requirements are. I mean, we're not signing off on anything, are we?
No.
So I think it's a good thing. I wish I would have gotten one of these when I first got on as well. I think it's a good thing.
Along with the zoning code, chapter 94.
Oh, geez.
So then let me ask you this thing, Gary. So you're in our industrial park. Does that mean you have to not participate in any discussions of construction in that area, or who interprets that, whether you might have a financial benefit? I'm just asking just because it's outlined here and we know that. I mean, I am not questioning your character. Don't misunderstand me. That I'm questioning whether somebody else is going to be able to now have an opinion on that or not. That
It's actually in the state statutes.
right.
I thought, isn't it up to the board as a whole if we feel someone, like, don't we have to vote on that?
That's, in fact, that's the announcement that I made at the beginning of the meeting. Mr. Garrett, in particular, if he had what's called pecuniary interest, which means money of him, a family member, or a close relative or corporation, a company they belongs to, had direct monetary interest in a particular issue, he is obligated to recuse himself and let us know. It may be something that could be affecting more than just him or a group of people or a very large area. But it would be up to this commission to decide whether we feel it's important enough. And I'm sure Mr. Garrett, in his own mind, would know when it's time for him to step away from an issue.
We have, but, and you've done that.
Yeah.
But it applies to also Joe with his affiliation to business in the industrial park. Does that influence then whether they should be participating in discussions on our TIF or the expenditures in the TIF? What I'm saying here is that it's a general term that results in financial benefit to a member or not. So the amount of taxes you pay may or may not be affected by what happens in the TIF or in the industrial park. And that's what I'm saying is that this kind of makes me a little.
It's still subjective.
Yeah.
What you're saying.
Right. And I'm uncomfortable with that. I wish there was more certainty to it and how it gets delivered or whatever, because who's gonna be interpreting in that?
And I'm sure there's not one of us that wanna get in any kind of trouble.
No, I know that. That's why I'm saying that having that like this, it's almost raising that.
It just outlines it so that you're aware of it, because leaving it to state statutes, I mean,
We're all
when's the
aware of
last
it,
time
yeah.
you read that? You know, that you knew that. It just lays it out. I mean, you're gonna have to do what you feel, because really, I mean, your statement about taxes, then really none of you, I mean.
Every
you're all
decision we make
property
affects our
owners.
own taxes.
Yeah, we should have a planning commission full of people who don't have any stake in the village of Weston then.
Don't own
live
property,
here.
don't pay taxes.
You just have to look at it as you're making a decision for the good of the village, not a specific person or a property. So if you can say that you're doing that and you're looking at it as the village as a whole, then you're doing your job.
Did we have a motion?
We did.
I'm sorry, I got a little lost in it.
Yeah, I seconded it.
And a second. Anything else on the question? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So carried. Thank you. Good discussion. Item 7, approval of the minutes of May 10th, 2021 joint PC and ETZ committee meeting.
I move to approve the minutes.
Moved by Cronin, second by Garrett. On the question. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? So carried. Approval of the minutes from the June 14th, 2021 plan.
Move for approval.
Moved by Manel,
Second.
second by Mumper. On the question. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? So carried.
Point of order.
Yes.
The minutes on number 7 are actually for the ETZ. The plan commission has already approved those.
Okay, so noted. So the ETZ will have to approve them.
Yes.
Thank
Need
you.
to withdraw my motion to approve.
You were on ETV.
That's redundant.
You're on ETZ, but I don't think all the ETZ members actually.
According to, no.
You want another motion?
Oh, no, there is a new, he's not on ETZ anymore.
He's not.
It's by now, done.
Yeah, that's why we had to bring the new nominations. The committee is different.
So we need a motion from the ETZ.
I'll move to approve the minutes of the May 10th meeting.
I'll second.
Mr. Chairman, would you care to conduct your, you're the chairman, so.
Any discussion on the minutes or any additions or corrections? Is there a motion to approve the minutes, or is there all in favor of the motion to approve the minutes for May 10th, 2021 ETZ committee minutes, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes stand approved as printed.
And who made the motion?
It was Milt Nelson and then Gary Gart on the second.
Okay. We got that straight now? Okay. Public hearings. If the public wishes to speak at a hearing which we are coming up to in this agenda, please fill out the public comment form and register it with the clerk Parker prior to the start of the meeting, or please log in using the Zoom meeting information listed above and raise your hand to be recognized to speak. Who is monitoring the Zoom? Michael? Is there anybody in Zoom?
Nobody with their hand raised now.
Is there, do we have visitors in Zoom?
There's one person on Zoom besides staff, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Referral from the Board of Trustees. I'm gonna open a public hearing and action on a request from the Board of Trustees to amend section 94.4.10 temporary land use types within chapter 94 zoning of the municipal code. This is for the Plan Commission and the ETZ. I'll open the public hearing. Presentation by staff.
So this was sent to you from the village board. You'll notice a little bit of change on how you're gonna see ordinances going forward. We recently went back to MuniCode, which is basically a company that stores the code online. So we're able to kind of do red line and do the ordinances and everything right online and from the document out there. So it might be a little confusing at first because I think I showed you the red line and then there would be the ordinance behind it. The section about the temporary sales by mobile food vendors was what was sent to you from the board. The way that MuniCode now makes us do things, I can't bring just a little snippet. So it brings the whole entire temporary use section of the code. What we noticed, so we thought we would look at the entire section since we're bringing it forward to you. So we did notice that there is discussion about the temporary portable storage containers in commercial, but there's really no regulations for them. So we're offering some changes there that we can discuss a little bit further. But really, the big change from the village board was in regards to the temporary sales by mobile food vendors. They asked us to change so that it reads, no mobile food vendor unit shall be located on the same parcel where a business is selling the same or similar products. They had us remove or any adjacent parcel. So when they had their discussion at the village board level, they were no longer concerned, like, I think it came up when they were talking about somebody selling something at Ace Hardware that maybe Pick and Save sells inside. Originally, when that ordinance was developed, it was based off of the city of Wausau ordinance. And at that time, there was some concerns about food trucks having similar foods to brick and mortar right next door to them. So it would be more of a case of maybe a chicken one setting up next to the pizza ranch or something like that. Just having somebody sign off on it first so that it didn't affect that brick and mortar store too. So that is that section. Does anyone have any questions?
Go ahead, Mr. Gary.
Can you clarify, Jen, are you saying that if somebody wanted to have brats and burgers outside of like the 4-H club or Everest Youth, whatever it may be, hockey, or they cannot have, being that Pick and Save has?
No, they can.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and it was never, that wasn't really ever enforced on it before. So this goes through a process through licensing through the clerk's office. And so they had changed their code because it didn't really match with the zoning code and it wasn't updated. So they had gone through and done that at, it was the June,
It was the last meeting, board.
June board meeting.
Right.
It might have even been May.
Well, it was a regular June, but.
Yeah, so they would, they do, they just have to get a license and there's no charge for a nonprofit. The board wanted to continue requiring a license so that there was somebody accountable that if case the police or the village had to get a hold of them, that we could if there was an issue.
So is this also the same section where it's, do we need to discuss any non-residential
For the,
containers, semi-trailers, any of this other thing?
yeah, so that's the other section of the code that we are bringing up, making a change to. So the code right now has something regarding the residential pods. It gave some timeframes. I went and looked at, the city of Wausau has recently gone through and updated their zoning code. It's real similar to ours now, but they did have language in regards to the non-residential. So the only change that I made for the residential section is underneath the performance standards, we only allow it as a temporary use for 30 days. I'm suggesting 90 to be more in the line with Wausau, give people some more time. That is totally up to you guys. We don't tend to have problems with the 30 days. We just need some kind of a parameter in case it stays there forever, like someone's trying to do that. We've had a few cases of that where the neighbor has called because people will get these and they'll just kind of use them in their front yards on their driveways, so.
Does that affect, Jennifer, does this affect, in some area on the commercial side, I saw a maximum of like 30 days. That wasn't.
Yeah, so the way that, right now it's listed as a temporary use. So the way I wrote it to be handled would be if they want to use it for a temporary nature, it could be the 30 or the 90. I went after the city of Wausau only has 30 days, so that's what I put in there. After that, it would go through a site plan process and it would be looked at as an accessory structure. So it would just go through a general site plan. So whoever the site plan approval authority, that's how we've handled it in the past in the business park. We've got a few that we don't tend to do anything when they're behind a fence, and maybe we want to put that in here. But we do have some instances where they need them. We want them to like not put them on the lot lines. We want to kind of know where they are, find the best location for it on a parcel out there. Another thing to note is these would only be allowed in those more industrial areas. We don't have them, I don't think they are in like the B2. So they're only allowed in B3. INT B3. RM.
Oh, because there's so many.
So INT, B3, and RM would be by conditional use. That would be through you guys. So anybody who wants to use them in an institutional property in the B3 areas, which tend to be just kind of that way along Schofield Avenue. Some of the properties back here. And then we do have a couple RM districts on Camp Phillips. There's 2, I think.
Some of the LIs, it looks like, are in there is permitted as well, some certain agricultural related. And what's the difference between agricultural use and agricultural related? Not quite sure why one's permitted and one's not, but do you guys have
You're not
any?
looking at zoning district, you're looking at land use.
Well, I don't know. In the like on page 29. Versus conditional or temporary or permitted. On all these charts.
So the chart was a lot easier to read when it was in our regular zoning code layout that we had. The muni code one is a lot harder. So if you are on page 18 of the document, I'm not sure what it is online there, but you could see the different districts on top. It doesn't carry over.
And then there's one that says prior to being
Yeah, so
amended, so you
this
kind
is
of
the other, yeah, so this
scroll
is
down through so many.
the other thing that you're gonna see, and I don't know exactly how to fix that right now, is with the way that Muni Code does it, it's gonna show you before the amendment and then it's gonna show you after the amendment. And that's essentially the ordinance section of it.
Yeah, without pulling them on, putting them side by side, it's kind of difficult to be going scrolling up and down this page just looking at them. So does that affect anybody in ETZ, how you guys, I mean, you have some people that use any of those sea containers or?
I think the only ones we probably have would be somebody moving into a house or something and they bring a pot in and usually they're not there that long. Not that many moving around.
Sometimes people they can, sorry.
Mark?
I was gonna say, sometimes in agricultural, Randy, you probably see some guys using them for storage of straw or, you know, they're somewhat a decent rainproof facility that can be used for storage. So
Yeah, that's probably more semi-trailers than.
Well, I believe this is gonna cover both semi-trailers and that, so,
Things like shipping containers.
yeah, shipping containers as we're talking, this is exactly.
If I can interrupt, I'd like our secretary to note that Mr. Minell has recused himself from this conversation at 6:42 PM. Okay, just for the record.
So does this, did you guys get a chance to look through this? Will that affect you guys out there?
Can I ask some questions? Because, you know, this was new to us, so I was just looking, how many, I mean, are these issued now? I mean, how many are we getting, dozens? Are there handfuls?
We don't, they're just kind of there. So that's why it kind of came up. We noticed that there weren't any regulations for them.
No, I'm talking about even the residential.
The residential we do,
Do people come in advance,
We've
or
gotten
you
them.
have to kind of catch them after the fact, or how does it work?
sometimes they'll call.
Okay.
Really, we only use it if it's been there for too long.
So if someone complains is really when you may become involved. So they're supposed to come in under 94-1607 in advance, right? If they want to put one in the front yard.
Yep.
Because they're moving in.
If we see it, Scott and Roman, I'll let them know.
Okay.
I mean, it came about just because we did have a couple residences. I think there was one on Western that they moved in and it was there 6 months later. And we got calls on it, so.
And is it typically, I mean, one of the, I have some process issues here, so I'm just trying to understand how they actually work because I'm not familiar with how you see them used. So if I'm the current owner and I'm selling and I want to put a pod in the front yard to pack up and then to have it hauled off the day before the sale goes through, okay? So I should call you. Do I get 30 days or whatever days? Let's just ignore the days. But then does the new owner, if they have a pod and they're bringing one in, do they get another 30 days or 90 days to bring in another pod?
So I would say yes.
So it's issued to the individual at the location and not to the location. And so the time period could actually be 6 months that there's a pod. If I'm the neighbor, there's a pod in the house driveway next door, 3 months for the guy going and 3 months for the guy coming. Just, I'm trying to understand. Is that?
Playing devil's advocate.
That's how it would work though?
That is how I guess we would. So that's why we're bringing it to you.
No, and that's why.
Passing it off of, because I mean, we tend to hear, you know, what does WASA do? So I'm telling you what WASA does.
Yeah, you guys do a much better job than WASA.
From a
in my opinion.
standpoint, thank you. We're asking you how you want us to regulate.
Okay, no, I'm just trying to understand what the issues are that you have with. Then the second thing I wondered is, where does agricultural fit in? The AR and the rural residential and the ETZs, that would be considered the residential. I assume
They
that.
would be under, I mean, we're not changing anything those are already existing. So what we just found was that there wasn't anything for commercial. The big thing for us is the commercial.
Well,
I'm not changing anything that was existing there, so.
And then the only reason I ask that is because the way the definitions are currently set up, we have residential uses, but then we have, of course, residential districts. And this new code, we've run across this before, agricultural is considered separate from residential for district purposes. So if we're talking about residential versus non-residential use, or whether we're talking about residential and non-residential districts, we end up with agricultural, especially the AR and RR5s, those aren't as clearly defined unless we define them. So is it the use or is it the district when we put residential and non-residential? Because that's where agricultural will have to be one or the other.
So it goes with the land use map or the land use chart. So it's considered residential, the ag is. on there. So if you look under AR,
Correct.
it's a temporary use. Temporary portable storage container is listed as a temporary use under all those districts. Every single, so the farmland preservation, the AR, R2, all the way to 2F. There's no changes there, that's what it was.
So we're just gonna flip to the non-residential agricultural use.
Am I reading it wrong, Jen? I see permitted use in AR and R2 and R5, and the only one I see conditional is in FB.
Are you looking under temporary land uses?
For amendment of the rural, allowable rural open space and residential zoning districts. First chart on page 18.
Yeah, I'm not sure, you're referencing 18,
No, so you're looking, yeah, so that's single family detached residence. You have to actually go to page 23, the temporary land uses.
Okay.
The temporary land use for this is temporary portable storage container. It's number 9.
Is that on?
23 on the bottom, I don't know what it is.
Hang on, I'll get there.
67 of the packet.
67?
Yeah.
Yep, 67.
Okay.
but isn't page 30, I'm getting confused on your page numbering here. Page 37 has listings
That's the commercial.
under commercial for agricultural, right? I gotta go back up on mine and miss the topic. I was confused.
There's only,
No,
no,
okay.
there isn't. There's
Okay.
the only one that's there is the RM district.
Okay. Okay, so if we go by the tables, then that issue's covered because the RRs
It is
and
only for
ARs.
residential there, and so I did not add that
Okay,
commercial, like when you go look at the commercial aspect of it, it's not added at all under residential.
okay.
There any, go ahead, Kim.
I prefer to leave it at the 30 days. In the case where you said, you know, you have 30 days for someone moving out, 30 days for someone moving in. I couldn't imagine having someone have a container in a driveway for 6 months. That would just be unacceptable to me. So I vote that we leave it as is.
There's not a motion yet, so, thank you.
And then my other question was, where does VRBO, if you wanna VRBO your house, what is,
There's,
say you're
there's a
moving-
whole different section on that. That goes through, we haven't done one for a while. I think it goes through a conditional use process.
It's a tourist rooming house.
Yeah, it's called a tourist rooming house.
7 days.
I saw the word tourist
It's-
around here somewhere, so.
It's more than 7 days, I think, or something like that. Under 7, I thought you could do it.
The one that, yeah, it's under tourist rooming house, which is on 26.
First one, house,
Yeah.
additional use.
17.
Yeah, that's under a different section.
It's under the commercial land uses.
So that one is a conditional use in AR, RR2, RR5. 2F. And MF.
So no single family houses can have VRBOs.
I would have to look at the code.
It's in another
We're
chart.
kind of getting off topic.
Yes, we are.
That's another chapter of the code.
Mr. Cronin, you had a,
Here. It's not another chapter if it's right here. You're asking us to approve it as is, right?
This is just the
No,
chart, so
That's the chart. The only change I'm making to the chart
Okay.
is the red line portion. We're only dealing with,
it's section 10 of the land uses. The commercial land uses is section 4.3. And so the public hearing was just for the temporary land uses aspect. We would have to come forward with a different agenda item if you wanted to discuss
Okay.
that section of the code.
So that's why we're confused all these pages.
Yeah.
I know, but it's, like I told you when it
It's like,
started
what am I looking
off.
at all these charts for?
Well, that's the way that the code is, it's not.
We're really just looking at the red line stuff, right? That's really what we're here
Yes.
for.
Mr. Cronin.
Jen, I'm curious, but does the code state anything specifically now in regards to what kind of surface the container needs to be placed on?
We don't have any regulations for commercial right now, but
So what-
lots of things have to be on like an all-weather surface. So like,
So what's the reason, I'm just curious what the reasoning is behind requiring that it's placed on asphalt, concrete, or other similar hard paved surface. I'm curious why, I mean, we've got businesses in the area that have stuff sitting on gravel right now. Why can we include gravel in that, or is there a reason that we can't?
I saw gravel in a section here, but I don't know if that was, then I saw another section here that showed.
I mean, you can add it, like I said, I took this from the city of Wausau because we did not have any regulations, so.
Sure, and I'm not sure, I'm just asking,
Yeah, I can look, I think there's a definition of hard surface in the back. It might include, it doesn't.
Ours does not include gravel.
So if you'd like to add gravel, we can add gravel.
Well, Mr. Chairman, are we done with the discussion on the residential?
I'm not sure yet. I think as far as I'm concerned, we're still on presentation by staff. At least that's what I understand. We haven't gotten to public comment yet.
Mark? Can I finish just because you asked the ETZ members, and so I just wanted to finish. So I guess, as I see it, as we concluded, your comment about using things in the agricultural districts within the ETZ, the temporary outdoor storage container would be considered to be in a residential area, which means it would be under the definition, the container designed and used primarily for temporary storage of household goods and other such materials for use on a limited basis. So it would not include the non-residential aspects that is also being proposed. Does that make sense to you, Gary? Do you understand?
Yeah, I understand that. I don't know if I agree with that. I would assume that, I'd rather see a farmer put all their stuff into a sea container that's covered up than have it spread all around the place. That's my opinion, but. I didn't know if that was gonna be a hindrance for anybody in your area or not.
Any other questions for staff? Anything else additional, Jen?
I have one.
Mr. Jordan, go ahead.
So talking about the commercial use now, if we adopt this, the reality is that in the commercial area, almost every outside storage container, semi-trailer or whatever is going to be illegal because just my observation driving around, they've all been there for longer than 30 or 90 days or whatever we adopt. Do you need a tool to manage this at this point? Do you feel that you have some people that are abusing the use of outdoor storage?
I don't feel like it, but it was brought up on why there wasn't any regulations for them. So we have any regulations. We could put something in code that states as of such a date following, they have to get approval. I don't know.
I think you're alluding to something like a freight yard where they have empty semis sitting there for quite a while.
Oh, yeah, well, I mean, for myself, for Gary, we have temporary storage trailers that sit on our property for extended periods of time. Sometimes they're empty, sometimes they're not. The reality is that they serve a function during a certain period, time of the year. You buy extra stuff, you need some temporary storage. It holds that for some period of time, and then when it empties out, you still keep the trailer until the next opportunity comes along. And so I'm reluctant to do that. On the other hand, they see, I mean, I'm just citing examples that I've seen as I drive around. First Supply has a shipping container outside in a parking lot that they've had there for a very extended period of time. Now, it's a nice, clean container, but that's says to me that they are lacking in the amount of space that they need to conduct their business at that particular site. So they also have all kinds of pipe and stuff outside, and they've put a fence with slats around it, so it's not disorderly or anything. So I'm just trying to understand, you know, do you really feel like you need a tool to go after some really junky offenders? Or is it general good practice to allow businessmen to run their business as they see fit based on what the economic realities of the particular time frame is? That's what I'm asking, you know. So do you need the regulation in order to do a better job of governance in the town? I hate
Right now,
adding.
they're not regulated, so they're really not called out anywhere and being able to be used. So that's some of the issue that we have. So there has to be some kind of parameters
Are you
for them.
receiving public comment, like citizens complaining that, you know, those instances where they see containers at non-residential areas? I personally think that if a business needs it, then we should allow them to use it. And I think outside of residential areas, people really don't care. That,
Well-
I think we're in search of a problem.
And for me, Jen, I would be okay if it was more about appearance as opposed to time frame. You know, so when does it become an issue? In my opinion, it becomes an issue when it starts to look really tacky or junky. And so it's not so much the idea that we limit the amount of time that they might have that, but more appropriate, I think, to manage the appearance.
So the other thing to think about on that is, so right, we're not getting citizens who are complaining, but we've had several businesses ask for these, you know, just as a temporary, hey, a restaurant or says, hey, I want to do this, I'm doing some remodeling. We don't allow it currently. So this is something that could potentially allow them to do it. There's been other businesses that technically we don't have anything in the code. So if they ask us, we as staff have to say no. So this allows staff to be more business friendly and to say yes to businesses as options of how they could bring it forward.
So what business district or what zoning districts are we talking about specifically, Emily, as it relates to?
I believe the one I'm thinking on the top of my head was LI. The restaurant was a year ago, and I don't believe they're going that route at this moment, and that doesn't, don't believe the code would assist in this manner, but it would be LI for temporary storage.
Any other commercial, like B1 or B3?
Well, I can, if I can,
Go ahead, Mr. Gear.
Target, look at their remodel. They had 10C containers in their parking lot.
Yeah, that goes through a different section of the code as part of the remodeling. That was part of their,
Well, I think that's what we're referencing. Why can't a restaurant remodel then?
it wasn't for remodeling, it was for storage
Oh.
of things.
Well, now they,
Actually, Target has them behind right now.
three containers that are back there that have been there for as far as long as I can remember now, in the building.
So if,
Excuse me, Mr. Maloney?
Just want to reference grocery stores. So not for remodeling, but during the holiday season, they may put a refrigerated trailer for 2 months. There's November and December. And then rotate out turkeys or rotate out hams. So would they need permission to do that? I mean, it's been going on for 30 years. And they all do it because there's times that my company actually loans the cooler, but a lot of stores use a full freezer and they keep that trailer frozen for 2 months. Because they have no way of holding that many turkeys or that many hams or whatever. So, I mean, it's been going on for as long as I've been in the business. right here in this area, so,
Right.
and I'm not talking about the remodel. Just a thought. And when you keep referencing, that this came to us, how did it come to us?
Jen brought the temporary storage pods to staff to review. When looking at it, storage pods only references for storage of household materials, but yet it was temporary in commercial districts. Most commercial districts aren't gonna have household items, so it was to help with the verbiage on technically the code allowed temporary, but didn't really allow it. So it just cleans up the verbiage to allow and bring them into
So
conformity.
it wasn't a complaint from somebody?
Not in this case, no.
Mr. Minell,
Is it open public?
you can make,
Not yet.
we haven't asked for public comment yet.
That was gonna be my question, or can we move just to keep things moving if are we done with staff presentation?
I was gonna ask for.
We're really strictly still on residential. We're not talking about the commercial ones yet because that's not brought on the agenda tonight. So I know,
Commercial is.
No, it's not there.
okay, well, then we got some issues. I thought I took the explanation that we were only here for the residential and any of the changes. If we wanna adopt a commercial, I think I for sure have some issues with that.
Language is discussing non-residential in the proposal.
The RFC.
Page 43, the green area does not.
If you look just on the second page of the RFC, that's the only language that's being added. And that came from City of Wausau, so if you wanna expand off of that or change anything, that is totally up to you.
Also, as a note, Plan Commission doesn't have to make a decision tonight. You guys could table and make a decision next
Defer.
month if you, defer if you would like staff to make tweaks or if you guys need time to think about it. Don't feel pressured.
Everybody done with staff presentation? Okay. We'll enter the public comment period. Is there anyone that wishes to speak in for, or, Mr. Minell?
You want me there or where?
Yes, please. Name and address to the record, please.
Steve Minell, 8303 Alderson Street. This all came up as a result of what we own. We own USAM self-storage. And there was in 2017, we bought some containers and put them in there. At that time, it's what they have. They have containers for storage. We have about 400 spots all told for the campers and everything. What surrounded by the industrial park, Mark Matthews all the way around us. And I was told that we should get what kind of permit?
Conditional use.
Conditional use permit for doing that we did in 17. And I kind of disputed it, saying this is open. It's not addressed anywhere that I could see at the time. So as we were talking about this, if I have to go through and get file a new one, then I'm gonna add another, 60 or 80 units or something like to that effect. So when you drive through the community, they're everywhere. They're everywhere. And a lot of businesses are they use them for their overflow, such as Joe has mentioned. There's one across the street here and there's one across the street in back of us here. Well, we also have some at Target. And I don't know if I pay personal property tax every year on these units, and I don't know what everybody else is doing. I just know that there's this void that's there. So now to have these changes, and I'm not in favor of these changes. I mean, if it's regulated and I'm supposed to have it, I'll get it. But the reality of it is, you're just setting up a whole lot of extra work for people to go out there and look for this. Because I don't know how many are out in the industrial park, but I don't think I'd have a hard time finding 15 of the places out there that have them. Not just you, Joe, but I mean, everybody has them. They're using them. And I think it's a big thing for the farmers to think that they're not gonna be able to have and store whether it's their, the fertilizer, whether it's their seed, whatever it is, these things are 1/4 inch steel. I mean, people hit them and it doesn't even take the paint off.
So can I just, one point of order? So the use that Steve is talking about with his USAM is actually underneath a different use. He would not fall underneath this.
But that's what
But
raised,
this is what prompted, yes.
yes, that's where all of this came from. I guess it was
We had a
2 weeks
meeting
ago.
and he brought up all the other ones out in the community.
Does anyone have any questions, Mr. Minell? Are there any other public comments for or against? Anyone on social media, Mike? No. Any other comments from the public for or against? Comments from the public for or against? Hearing none and seeing none, Michael? I'll close the public hearing. Recommendation from staff. Prefer not to recommend, I gather.
We are bringing this to your attention.
Duly noted.
I mean, I will be honest, I'm not sure the best way to regulate this.
Okay. Item F would be discussion and recommendation to the village board by plan commission. This is plan commission only discussion. This is our chance to talk about the issue. This is not further debate with the public or staff. So amongst us, is there anybody who would like to make a comment or make a statement? Go ahead, Gail.
I'll make the same statement I made before on the residential. I would like to see it left at 30 days. I can't imagine you're gonna have too many happy calls if someone has a pod, their neighbor moves out and has one for 3 months, the new neighbor moves in and has another 3 months. That is not acceptable for anybody I know.
Thank you. Anyone else? Comments? Discussion?
I think one thing maybe based on asphalt, concrete, or similar hard paved surface, can it be gravel added to that? I mean, I don't want them on the lawn, but I think as long as it's on, some driveways are gravel and.
As far as I understand it, you can modify this any way you deem fit. If you want to say gravel, you can do that.
Add the word gravel behind concrete or something?
It would. So after this discussion, there would be a motion in action by the ETZ and motion in action by the plan commission. So when you craft your motion, make sure it details what you want or what you feel that should be in there. Any other discussion by the village board and by the plan commission? Mr. Cronin.
I'm curious where you're seeing 90 days, because when I look at like the green wording that's being changed, I see 30. And I know that applies to non-residential, but
It's only 30 days for non-residential.
Currently.
So are we changing the residential?
No, so the residential was up here underneath the first part, it wasn't in green.
Okay,
So it was just explained, they said under the performance standards, it should say change, was made to allow the containers to stay for 90 days instead of 30. This aligns with what WASA allows.
so that's for residential.
That's residential.
Okay.
She's asking to change it back, just leave it, so not make a change.
Okay,
So we would take that out. Then the next change is with the temporary sales by mobile food vendors. That's the red line that's shown there.
and then the third change was.
And then the third
green area.
change is that's all new language, because we
Okay.
don't currently have that land use right now.
I just wanted to clarify, so thank you.
Yep, no, that's fine.
Randy?
So on let's say you had your basement flooded, your roof got ripped off by wind. You had to move all your stuff into a container in your yard. Does that fall under something else or? would it
Yeah, I
still-
think that falls underneath there's a construction one that.
And actually in the code, there is a road privilege permit that would allow for that to actually be set in the roadway. Permit that be issued so that Everest Metro would know that it was there and have to be marked so that it can be visibly seen at night.
All right.
What's the rest of the commission think? Is this something that we can take action on tonight, or do we need some time to think about this?
I'd rather defer.
Well,
I would, think that we could make a motion on the residential storage pod portion.
Yes.
Do nothing on the commercial. And make a separate motion then to address the mobile food court.
Yes, you can.
So it would require three separate motion, or
Yes.
two motions, and then a choice not to do anything as far as commercial storage.
Residential.
Is that correct, or does it all need to be in one motion?
No, actually, compound motions are not
No,
advisable.
that's what I'm talking about. So there'd be two motions, one to change the residential storage pod thing, or not to change it, I guess, because we want to leave it at 30 days. Well, speaking for myself and Gail.
So if you don't wanna do anything but change the mobile food vendors, then you would just
Take action on that.
just take action on that, and we wouldn't do any
Let's
more.
leave the list up late.
Right. That's kind of where
Yeah, I agree with you.
I'm leaning at this point.
So just the food vendor?
Right.
Okay.
You wanna make that motion, Joe?
This is a motion by the plan commission only.
Yeah, so for the plan commission, I gotta find that. So what was the
Yeah,
issue
page,
in
59, Joe.
59?
There you go.
So I would make a motion for the land commission that the verbiage, which you just moved, on G,
Who's jumping around?
vendor unit shall be located.
If you go to the first page of the RFC, you could probably read it right off of there.
Yeah.
I don't have it down in the bottom. So it's the
There you go.
There you
section 94
Okay, so,
or 1013.
yep, make a motion to, as relates to section 94.4.1013, temporary sales by mobile food vendors. Only change made is to delete the words or any adjacent parcel from item J.
Is that your motion?
That'd be the motion.
We have a motion by Jordan. We have a second.
That's fine.
Who spoke first?
Gary?
Second by Gary. On the question, all in favor say aye. All opposed? So carried.
Is there a motion for any discussion from the ETZ committee in regards to the motion or food vendors or anything? Changes?
Similar motion to the PC.
Second.
Motion made by Mark, second by Randy to make the same changes to the ETZ code 94.1, .10, sub 13, temporary sale of mobile food vendors. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
So, could we have the plan commission recommend to the staff that they need not bring forward any additional work on the residential or commercial storage?
Well, I think, I don't
think
know if we
there's-
want to do that because if they have further issues and they have complaints for the plan commission to say, no, we won't discuss this issue, it kind of puts a handcuff.
No, I guess what I'm looking for, and that's exactly what I'm looking for, is how do we tell them that we're not currently seeing any issue that we would need to add regulation?
Take no action.
I don't know if it takes a I don't know if a
I
motion is
don't
necessary.
think we need it.
I don't
I
think we
just
need-
want to recommend.
You can make a general consensus.
Right, until such issues come up. Right, go ahead, Keith.
Wouldn't you just recommend to make no changes to other parts of this ordinance?
You can do that by motion if you
Okay.
wish.
I could add the word at this time, you might change your mind.
I like
That
that.
way it leaves you
Yep.
an option.
All right, so I would make a motion at the current time not to change any of the code as it relates to residential or commercial storage.
I second the motion.
Motion by Jordan, second by Marshall.
That would be temporary storage, correct?
Temporary storage, yes, right, temporary
The
storage.
motion is amended to say temporary Second? A motion and second. Plan commission only. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So carried.
Any discussion from the ETZ committee in regards to temporary storage?
Make this big motion.
For a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mark, second by Randy, to make the same motion for the ETZ committee, for ETZ section of the code 94. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Okay, next item is zoning map amendments, conditional uses and related requests. Item 10, project number 2021-0209, request from Quick Trip.
Mr. Chairman, point of order, does ETZ, can they adjourn now?
No.
They have an item on the agenda.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Outside.
I just saw the next item was. Sure.
Milton and I had a discussion.
My bad.
Okay. Secretary, please note that Mr. Minell has returned to the table. Thank you. Again, request from Quick Trip for rezone of 5603 and 5601 Business Highway 51 from B2 Highway Business Zoning District to PD Planned Development District, and requesting a conditional use permit to allow a new facility consisting of an automobile fueling service, car wash, and underground petroleum product storage tanks within a WHP-A wellhead protection area, A, Zone A overlay district per section 94.6.03.4. This is for the plan commission. I'll open the public hearing.
All right,
Presentation by staff, please.
hang on to your hats, guys. This is a little confusing, so bear with me.
It hasn't been so far.
This is, so this is in conjunction with that plan development code, plan commission village board approved a couple months ago. Yep, and so this is staff's first go through it, as well as the applicants. So ask questions, please, if this doesn't make sense. So, Quick Trip at their 5603 Highway 51 location is looking to do a complete rebuild of the site, redoing how traffic flows, and they're also have purchased the Lee Balkans rent-to-own property, which you might have noticed has already been torn down. They're going to combine the properties and reshift the building and the gas canopy for a brand new updated site. As you can see kind of a schematic there. So part of the project, the rezone, is they're looking to go plan development zoning district, which allows them to do some lessening of zoning code. Specifically for this case is only a setback matter. Otherwise, they're meeting all other sections of the code. So part of the plan development code in the zoning chapter allows for plan development projects to have a reduced setback of 5-foot setbacks on all lot lines. Instead of, if they stayed in the B2 zoning district, would be 15 feet for any street facing and 10 feet for the other zone, property lines. So that's what this request is for the property to be rezoned from B2 zoning district to the plan development to allow them to move forward with this plan development. You'll notice in the packet, they had to do a general development plan. They also have to do a specific implementation plan, which comes later after the rezone, if it is approved by plan commission and village board. So that's kind of the quick and dirty on the rezone. The site plan, as you kind of are familiar with conditional uses, site plan usually goes there. In this case, it doesn't. It would go with the rezone. So the site plan kind of gets stuck along with the rezone here. So there's a new convenience store with a 1-stall attached car wash and a 20-star stall, gas canopy. About 40 parking stalls are proposed on site, so significantly more parking than what's current, a lot better traffic flow, cleaning up drive accesses, narrowing down the Newport access, and just making it a better flowing property altogether. They are requesting one waiver for the site, and that's to reduce the 25-foot vegetative buffer from 25 feet down to 5 feet, and that's along the eastern lot line. That is a waiver that is allowed by the site plan. If the site plan authority determines that a less adequate separation is necessary, or if there's site constraints, which this is already pretty tight with the new larger building, larger canopy, additional car wash, also maintaining stormwater facilities on the site. and whatnot. So that is something that is an allowable waiver in the code. In the RFC, I mentioned there were some minor deficiencies. Since I've written that report, since it had to go out Wednesday, we've actually received all those deficiencies and are fine. So there's actually no deficiencies on this site plan right now. So we are actually good to go. So you can just edit that out of the motion. And then there is a conditional use permit, which we can touch on after the rezone, but that's more for the wellhead area. They're gonna be taking the old tanks out of the ground and relocating them with the location of the gas canopy, which does shift them 10 feet over, which unfortunately puts it into wellhead protection A, and gas tanks, car washes, petroleum storage within wellhead A are all conditional use permit, which requires it to come before Plan Commission for approval. Tommy Car Wash had to go through that 2 years ago for their car wash, so very similar situation. So, questions, comments?
Question. Where are they located in the wellhead protection area?
Where, like right on the border of wellhead protection zone A and B. I don't believe I have a map.
What's the radius? Is it 1 mile?
So, wellhead protection A is 1 mile from the wellhead, correct? And then B is, 1 year. It's a range of how fast the water flows. So it's a 1 year recharge is wellhead protection zone A, and then zone 5 is a 5 year. And they're like 10 feet on either side is kind of where this project is taking place. And there's actually the line right there on the map.
So this line here shows the divider between, this is wellhead zone A, this side is B. I think right now the tanks are like right here in B, and they're gonna be moving just inside the line into A. And then the car wash, I think will almost kind of split A and B.
Is the car wash being discharged to sanitary sewer or?
Yes.
Good question.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Have they had any contamination on their site right now? Or previously?
Not that I'm aware of.
So we are asking that environmental assessment be done, part of the conditional use permit for the wellhead protection, so those items have to be addressed in that report.
Copy of the CUP is in there. I believe we're also requiring contingency plan in case there is anything. So basically, the same thing Tommy Wash was being required. Contingency plan, liability insurance, and the environmental study. Are all being required as part of the conditional use permit as conditions of approval. If Plan Commission wants to take those out as a, or add anything, you're welcome. Also, if I can make one more note for staff presentation. So at last meeting, there was a comment that the Plan Commission would like to work through the determinations themselves instead of staff drafting it up. So at all your desks for this rezone, this conditional use, as well as the Mount Olive rezone, I will put the draft or the determination questions for Plan Commission to work through. And those do need to be answered all yeses in order for those to be, for the rezones and the conditional use permit to be approved.
The first one starts on page 87.
Do you have a question, Lauren?
Yeah, yes, I do. A couple questions. They're gonna excavate the current tanks, correct? That's covered by the DNR as I understand it. DNR has to do that, observe that. Is that correct?
It's either the DNR or the state,
Yes, no?
yes, there's a state agency, I can't remember if it's DNR or the.
DNR is the section in the administrative code specifically giving the instruction how to design the system.
Okay,
Their tank and accidental spill or flow, whatever from the tank.
excavator pokes a hole in the tank.
Yeah. They have.
Would assume they empty it out first before they do that.
I think there's a representative.
There is representatives from Quick Trip here if you were looking for.
And that's what I was gonna get to next. The other issue, when you talk about the reduction in setback in the east side of the lot, is there a fence along that east lot line?
There's not a fence being proposed, there's landscaping going to be along that lot line, and there's a retaining wall on kind of the midsection where the building's going to be.
Has there been any correspondence from those property owners on the east side?
I have not heard anything from those property owners, and it is rentals, so it would have gone to the landowner, but we've not received anything in phone calls or emails, and I don't know if there's anyone here who might be for public hearing, but we haven't heard anything yet.
And I think at this time it'd be a good idea for us to talk to the people that are proposing this.
Sure.
Is that okay? Someone step forward, name and address to the record, please.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Troy Malezova, Real Estate Development Manager with Quick Trip, 1626 Oak Street, La Crosse, Wisconsin. Thanks for the time. Our proposal is summarized by staff. We are looking to redevelop this site, including the Leibachens former property to the north, and eventually rebuild this into a new Quick Trip facility to serve the community for many years to come. Our plan essentially rotates the orientation of the building that you saw on the plan. I think one of the largest issues that we came through with staff was the setback along Business 51, the lot, due to the angular nature of 51. The green space along that side is irregular. The farther you get north, the smaller the green space gets. And that's what led to a lot of discussion about the PD and the change of the zoning. And that flexibility allows us to get good circulation throughout the site, safe access points both to the west and to the south. And with that flexibility, we can have a nice setup close to Business 51, but still have room for stormwater and some green space along that frontage to make it look really nice in the future compared to the virtual zero green space that you see on that corridor today. It'll be a multi-million-dollar investment. With that, we'd have a brand new store that we anticipate a 30-year or more lifespan of the building. With that, obviously the tanks and the fueling operations would all be replaced. With that, there is obviously state regulations that we follow from DNR and Department of Commerce on regulating those systems. And our track record with that is very well received with the state. So we think we've got a good plan here. We appreciate staff in the village working with us and would ask for your support tonight. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions?
So I guess with respect to this, with respect to the discussion or question about the engineering controls that are in place on the underground fuel tanks, how does that get addressed through state law and so forth?
Sure. I guess what I would say is the modern fueling systems are not what they used to be 30 years ago. There's all duplicative systems. There's double walled tanks. They're computer monitored. We have monitoring in the store, then also to our comm center 24/7 back in La Crosse. So the modern system on the gas alone would probably be north of $1 million that would be invested there. So with that, there's certain best management practices that are required, and Quick Trip would have all those incorporated and the state regulations followed in that regard.
Thank you.
I have no other, plan commission members?
I was just looking here that they, at one time they did have, they were, contaminated site is what I'm reading on DNR. So that you have to excavate all of that again to remove it? Or did anything go to the Leibachens, or I'm just curious?
I don't know the specifics of what we have on file, but if there is an opportunity to excavate when we would take out the old tanks, that would be the time to do it, when we'd rebuild and replace everything.
They've done the same thing where McDonald's is, when they actually trucked all the soil offsite and ran it through an asphalt plant, and cooked it all off.
And then
brought it back and buried it.
Treated it with asphalt and brought it back.
So that's what they did historically.
That was
So I was here when they did that. And I was like, why are they cooking all the petroleum volatile organic compounds off in the cooker that they have down there? And then brought it back and buried it. Still there.
Yeah, I'm just bringing it up because there was some, I just looked at the DNR site as we were sitting here, and it shows that there's some additional stuff if you disturb the soil. So I just was pointing that out.
Any other questions, comments? Well, Mr. Donner, go ahead.
So with respect to Mr. Manel's question, then, as you're taking out existing tanks, there is an observer there. My understanding is typically the state fire marshal or a representative of the state fire marshal's office. Scott, I don't know if you were familiar with that, but that was how I understood it happened. I guess they monitor or observe whether there seems to be any soil contamination and things like that as this procedure goes forward. Or am I incorrect?
I'm not sure myself. I don't know.
I know that there is a tank contractor that the state hires to monitor these different sites. Whether they'll actually have someone on site when they're doing it, I don't know, but they do get inspected before they are, filled back in again.
I do know there is processes to follow and that when they're doing that excavation, they do find something, they are in communication with those and those are documented, papered with consultants and followed through on. So it's not a unusual step. It's done all the time and we're used to those procedures.
You can understand our concern because this is really close to a wellhead. So we had a lot of questions when we did the Tommy Wash. We were very concerned about that because once a well is contaminated, not to say that your site might do it, but once the site is contaminated, it's not good news. So
And that's
that's
another
why
condition staff put in the conditional use.
Pardon?
That's another condition staff put in the draft conditional use.
Which
is
brings
to
up another question that I have.
Requiring that
for you.
inspection reports be given to staff.
So at the end of this hearing, there's actually 2 actions that we have to take, correct? That was my question. Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time.
Okay. Anything else?
I have one for you.
Sure, go ahead, Mr. Garen.
Are the same requirements gonna be put on the tanks for the coating on the tanks for the Tommy Wash?
That was the discussion or proposal that was mentioned by staff as in the recommended conditions on this.
Mark has something.
Speak up. Mr. Maloney.
I'm just asking everyone to move your mics closer to when you're speaking. Some of you I can hear without a mic, and a lot of us can't if it's kind of quiet.
I just asked if there was, the same requirements put on, the tanks that would be used in the car wash as we did requirements for Tommy Wash down the road. I just want to make sure there's gonna have this special coating put on it.
Yep, the same conditions were put on this one. The only difference is the inspection reports because it's the sediment tank for Tommy Wash versus the petroleum tank for Quick Trip. We followed state inspection guidelines for the petroleum tank where the Tommy Wash one had a different inspection rate, but the liability insurance, the contingency plan, the environmental report, it's all the same.
I seen that, I just didn't see anything on the tank itself for the car wash for the chemicals.
So that's gonna be dependent on what chemicals they have too. I mean, a petroleum tank's different than something with
Yep.
muriatic acid, so.
Any other questions? Okay. Open up the public comment period. Anyone in the audience or on social media? Comment either for or against? Anyone wishing to comment for or against? Anyone wishing to comment for or against? Anything, Michael?
No.
Seeing and hearing none? I'm gonna close the public hearing. Recommendation from staff?
Recommendation is to have plan commission recommend approval of the rezone and then approve the conditional use contingent on the rezone being approved by village board.
And I have a question for staff. Do you want us to read through this and answer, do you want me to read through these and have this commission answer them as a group?
Yes, please.
How far do I have to read? Through 1 through 4?
Yep, those are the determinations for the rezone.
Okay, thank you. And do we need to do that for, just for F?
You'll need to do it for the Quick Trip rezone, the Quick Trip conditional use, and then the Mount Olive rezone as well. So you guys will be doing this 3 times tonight.
Gee, thanks. Okay. Discussion and recommendation to the village board by the planning commission on the rezone request and general development plan. Plan commission members?
For a motion?
I would probably do the determination.
We're gonna do the determination first. But I was gonna ask if there was any discussion that the plan commission wanted to make beforehand. Seeing nobody. I could assign this for somebody to read, couldn't I? Okay, this is on the determination for the rezone request and general development plan, correct? This is what I'm reading, the first document. Okay, the first question is the proposed rezoning consistent with the comprehensive plan as is required by Wisconsin statutes? You don't need a motion on this, just
Yes.
Say yes.
Yes.
yes. I think we have a yes. Does the rezone further the purpose and intent of this chapter?
Yes.
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 Number 3, does rezoning address any of the following that are not properly addressed on the current official map? If you read through these, I think you can pick one or multiples of them.
Usually it's one.
One, okay? Anyone care to pick one? That's most appropriate for this situation. 3. Okay, I'll read. Growth patterns or rates have changed, thereby creating a need for rezone. Okay, item 4. Does the proposed zoning district maintain the desired consistency of land use intensities, and land use impacts as related to the environs of the subject project? That's a big word.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I think we have yes on all 3.
Or
Okay. So,
3, number 3 is 3.
What?
Number 3 is 3.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
okay. So now I think we'll move on to if
This is what I.
a plan commission member wishes to make a motion, and there are conditions that were suggested by staff
It's in the conditional use permit.
in this next document.
When you get to the conditional use, and you just usually approve the conditional use permit, which is in the, is how it's gone. And Jen
This
had
is
a
the
comment.
this is the rezoning request.
You're just on rezoning right now.
So you would actually skip down, so she gave you, the staff recommendation was to approve. Then it says plan commission, go back up, Michael.
Okay.
Those are your action options. We typically
Action options.
fill this out. This actually goes, this document goes to the board. So this is kind of what your determination is.
I move to approve the rezone requests and forward the recommendation onto the village board at the 7/19/21 meeting agenda.
We have a motion by Cronin and a second by Garen on the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So carried. Next item under the same item is the discussion and action on the conditional use permit, correct? Okay. One of these is really long. So this is the part that we did on the previous action. I will read these, or I'll find somebody else to read them. Item 1, is the proposed conditional use is consistent with the comprehensive plan, this chapter and all other plans, programs, and ordinances adopted by the village?
Yes.
Yes.
2, the proposed conditional use in its proposed location and as depicted on the required site plan will not result in a substantial or undue adverse impact on nearby property, the character of the neighborhood, environmental factors, traffic factors, parking, public improvements, public property, or rights of way, or other matters affecting the public health, safety, or general welfare, either as they now exist or as they may in the future be developed as a result of the implementation of the provisions of this chapter, the comprehensive plan, and all other plans, programs, and ordinances adopted by the village.
Yes. Number 3, the proposed conditional use will maintain the desired consistency of land uses, land use intensities, and land use impacts as related to the environs of the subject property.
Yes.
Yes.
Number 4, is a proposed conditional use located in an area that will be adequately served by and will not impose an undue burden on any of the improvements, facilities, utilities, or services provided by public agencies serving the subject property?
Yes.
Yes.
Number 5, do the potential public health benefits of the proposed conditional use outweigh potential adverse impacts of the proposed conditional use after taking into consideration the applicant's proposal and any requirements recommended by the applicant to ameliorate such impacts?
Yes.
Now,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, sir.
I would,
Draft motion is on 108, Michael, if you want to bring that up. Right under that. There you go.
I'm trying to find this, right on your sheet. Right there.
Listed
Oh, no, you moved.
on page 110. There you go.
No, right underneath your, what you're reading.
With the following conditions.
Whoever's making the motion, do we need to read off all those conditions, or can we just simply say the conditions?
Make the motion with conditions 1 through 7 as
Okay.
stated by staff.
There's actually 10.
My bad.
If you're okay with this, this is the document that will go to the board.
You gonna make it, Bill? I'll make a motion.
Go ahead.
Motion to approve the conditional use for construction of new facility consisting of automobile fueling service, car wash and underground petroleum, product storage tanks within wellhead protected area, zone A at 5603 and 5601 Business Highway 51 with the following conditions. Because the conditions included in the document from conditions 1 through 10.
Motion by Garen, is everybody on second? Second by Mumford. Everyone understand the motion? Any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So carried. Thank you. And this does go on to the village board, correct?
And then the rezone will go to the village board next week on Monday. And then we'll hold off on the conditional use, sending that to the county until obviously that's approved. Technically, that needs to get approved before the project can really move forward. Yeah,
So I have a question. Since there's nothing on the agenda other than one item for the ETZ, would it be appropriate for us as a body to move item number, excuse me?
That might be lengthy.
Pardon?
That might be a lengthy discussion and there's still some hearing.
Okay, duly noted, so we won't do that. Item 11, project number 20200230, public hearing and action on a request from Mount Olive Lutheran Church requesting the official zoning map, the land use map be amended to change the zoning.
Thank you. Thank you.
Zoning designation and land use designation at 2809 Jellick Avenue from single family S, single family residential small lot, zoning district to institutional zoning district, and land use designation from single family residential sewer to institutional. This is planning commission. I'll open the public hearing. Presentation by staff.
all right, this one is only slightly less confusing as the last one. So Mount Olive Church has submitted a rezone request for the property at 2809 Jellinek Avenue. As you can see right there on the map, it's a large single family residential small lot property that they own. They're looking to do future development on it for celebration of life facility along with funeral home. And obviously that doesn't fit within the single family zoning district. So they're proposing, requesting it be rezoned to institutional, which there is institutional directly adjacent to it. As part of the rezone request, this does need to also be accompanied by a comprehensive plan amendment. As the future land use map shows that a single family, it would need to also be amended to institutional. So similar to how we did the Hinner subdivision, you guys would make the recommendation on the rezone, but technically because of the comprehensive plan, it wouldn't go to village board until August. So there's just a little bit of timeline fun juggling here. And ultimately the comprehensive plan needs to be approved by village board for the rezone to be approved. And there is a draft concept of the site in the packet if you're intrigued, but otherwise that's staff's quick little piece.
Does the comprehensive plan need to come back in front of us?
Not before plan commission, that's what this section is.
That's what this is.
Really, it doesn't come before plan commission at all, just because the rezone comes before you guys, we like to give you a heads up and let you make a motion on it as well.
Well, essentially, you do take action on, you recommend a comprehensive plan amendment to the board. So you guys are the keeper of the plan, but they have the final say and they do the public hearing. We've always done the public hearing in front of the plan commission also, because in my mind, it doesn't pay to get it all the way to the board. If there's gonna be lots of opposition, it's not gonna get out of plan commission. So we kind of do an extra step and we do hearings, but the state requires us to do a hearing before the board.
Anything else from staff?
We've not heard from anyone on
Yes.
this.
Do we have someone
On our
from,
side.
is it Mount Olive?
Mount Olive, REI is here, Tom Redens.
Name and address for the record, sir?
Sure, Tom Renz with REI, 4080 North 20th Avenue, Wausau. With me, I've got Pastor Lance, in the back row, Lucas Gajewski, and Mike Tice. Mike Tice is both a member of the church and also the architect for the project. So just a special note, we're working with the congregation here, so it's not like working with a single applicant. So we're here to represent what the congregation is putting forward. And they had a congregational meeting the other morning, and the congregation is comfortable with us moving forward with the rezone application. The congregation hasn't put forward the buildings or anything to that nature, but we wanted to give you an idea of the flavor of why we're coming in front of you. And should the congregation decide that they wish to move forward with a site plan similar to this or a project similar to this, then again, we'd be coming before you with that site plan application. So just a quick background, the goal of this rezone is to help further the work of Mount Olive Church. Emily clearly stated that's to celebrate the stages of life, baptisms, wedding, end of life, and spiritual growth is what I'd like to accomplish on this. Rewind the clock back to 1971. Mount Olive started in the Weston community. My understanding is they visited in the town hall. In 1973, they bought this property. Built their first building. That building was then added on to 1987, 2000, and then 2007. So this would be a subsequent addition if that happens, if the congregation chooses to move forward pending your approval of the rezone at some point in the future. The property, to Emily's point, is currently zoned single-family small lots, which are 10,000 square foot minimum lot size, 80-foot lot width. We'd like to change it to institutional, to use something similar to what you see on the map. There is a navigable stream that bifurcates the two properties, and there's also wetlands on either side of that navigable stream. This piece in particular has very small wetland impacts just on the southwest corner and just a little bump on the west side. So by and large, it's all upland. The wetlands were delineated in 2019 by Gary Starzinski. So we're comfortable with that. We've contacted DNR. We're aware of the fact that it's a navigable stream, so we're comfortable with the setbacks and all the work that we'd have to do around the stream itself, pending the approval. The property is accessed off of Jelnik on the north side, 250 feet of frontage. Jelnik's considered a collector street per the Wausau area functional classification mapping dated 4/28/2017. There's a secondary access off of Sutter Road that we would not propose using should this project move forward. If you notice around the exterior, you'll see a lighter band that represents the 25-foot buffer setback. So what we'd like to do is be conscious of the neighbors and around us, and again, look at how we'd create that buffer between this property and adjacent landowners. On this plan, we're showing a 7,000 square foot funeral home for end-of-life planning services, intimate setting for families to gather, and then end-of-life preparation. And that would be on the blue building on the north side. The Ascend Spiritual Retreat Center would be approximately 10,000 square feet. That's located where the cursor is showing. 10,000 square feet with about 1,300 square feet outside for a small gathering area. Again, to celebrate important life stages, baptisms, wedding, end-of-life, and spiritual growth events. A pedestrian bridge would connect this campus to the main church campus. We haven't defined what size that pedestrian bridge would be. Maybe it'd be large enough to carry a small maintenance vehicle. That is yet to be determined. But we'd like to obviously just keep that access off of Jelnik for this site, for cars and then pedestrian traffic to travel across that pedestrian bridge. We intend to meet all the DNR and the village code requirements relative to stormwater, pending your approval. Pastor Lance is gonna give a short 45-minute sermon, but his voice is sore this evening, so he's asked not to speak. But if there's any questions, collectively, we can hopefully answer them for you. Thanks for your time.
Are there any questions? Mrs. Scotty?
Could you explain your parking?
Sure, the intent is, so if you look at in the south, the southeast corner, the Ascend Spiritual Center, there's a drop off, a canopy there. And so the traffic would rotate, come down the main drag, drop off and go into park. And then on the north side would be more of like staff parking or a service entrance. And again, I don't want to get into the weeds on the site plan. This would be a concept of what could be prepared. We could get more into the weeds on site plan, but this was just something that was put in front of the congregation of how something could look.
And how many parking, how many spaces?
What do we have? 50 some, I believe. In the ballpark.
That would all go through site plan approval when they brought it back.
Correct.
Because we would need to know the actual
Also, looks like a lot
uses.
of parking to the west.
Correct, that's for the church itself.
Yeah, we wouldn't look at that
Right.
just because
Yeah.
it's not adjacent to it.
And these are gonna remain two separate parcels, they're not gonna be merged.
We haven't talked about merging them. I mean, we don't have any building adjacent to the lot line, so I don't know if there'd be a need to.
Any other questions?
Well, this property has already been obtained by the church?
2018, they purchased it.
The tree farm,
That's good, yeah.
Prohaska.
Well,
It's about 5 acres, just a little over 5 acres.
Any other questions? Thank you. Anyone from the public that wishes to speak for or against? Anyone on social media, Michael?
No.
Anyone wishing to speak for or against? Anyone wishing to speak for or against? Seeing and hearing none. We'll close the hearing. Recommendation from staff.
Staff recommends approval.
Okay. This is this first action is the discussion recommendation to the village board by planning commission on comprehensive map amendment. Is that contained in this particular document or is it somewhere else?
Resolution should have been attached to the, yep, 126 is the resolution for the comp plan for plan commission recommending adoption to the village board.
Okay, 126 you say?
126 through 127.
Okay. Any discussion by the plan commission members? Mr. Crowe?
So this resolution is what's going to the board next month.
Yep, this would go to the board next month, either you guys approving or I guess there'd be a denial resolution. If you were not in favor of this, it would essentially go to the board, either way.
Okay.
Any other questions? Discussion by plan commission? Okay, looking for a motion on item F, is that correct?
We have to do the determinations.
Mr. Chairman?
Determination would be for the rezone,
For the rezone.
the comp plan. Good plan commission, though, that was awesome.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
I asked that, didn't I? I thought.
You're looking for a motion to approve the,
No, for the,
Recommend approval
of the rezone?
of the comp plan.
yeah.
So resolution 2021 PC 005.
I'll make a motion and to recommend adoption of the components of the comprehensive plan of Weston, Marathon County, Wisconsin, consisting of amendments to chapter 3, land use, specifically map 3-1, future land use, volume 2, vision and directions.
I'll second that. Motion by Mumford, second by Rydell. On the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So carried. The next item under this would be discussion and action. Discussion and recommendation to the village board by the planning commission on the rezone request. Shall we fill out the worksheet first?
Yep.
Want someone else to read, Lori? Pardon?
Want someone else to read?
That's all right, I can tough it through. Is the proposed rezoning consistent with the comprehensive plan as is required by Wisconsin statutes?
Yes.
Yes.
Does the rezone further the purpose and intent of this chapter?
Yes.
Yes.
Does the rezone address any of the following that are not properly addressed on the current official zoning map? If so, pick one.
Number 3. I would say 3, yeah.
Growth patterns or rates have changed, thereby creating the need for rezoning, and that's yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Does the proposed zoning district maintain the desired consistency of land use intensities, and land use impacts as related to the environs of the subject property?
Yes.
Yes.
Therefore, I'm looking for a motion.
Recommend motion to approve, rezone request and forward to, recommend it to the village board on 8/16/21 meeting agenda.
I'll second.
Motion by Garrett and a second by Cronin. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So carried. Communications. Do we have any written communications? Valerie, do you have any? Still there?
I do not.
Thank you.
No one else filled out a public comment? We have a public comment right now, so if anyone from the audience wishes to speak, 5 minutes. It'd be great if you wish to speak. Seeing and hearing none. Moving on to item 14, new business, proposed changes to chapter 94, article 13, signs.
Can we take like a 2-minute restroom break? Is that okay?
Move for a recess.
Sure, yes, that. 2 minutes.
Motion for a recess, is there any objections?
I just want to add to that, is 14, did I hear was going to be a little long?
Yeah, if we could move 16.
Could we move to 16? We have just one more group here.
Yeah.
in the audience.
Sure,
After,
that's fine.
after our 2
Yeah.
minutes. No, if you have to go potty, go ahead.
Sorry, guys.
Just remember, you have to walk back into this room.
I'm taking advantage of it too.
Okay.
When nature calls, we must answer. Gotta go. Don't care if you're in the middle of the war.
I would have just went,
I know. Hope the one carpets. So you're gone? Well, we have to, pet sitting in the. It's a 3-hour drive down, a 3-hour drive back.
Where you grew up? You did? You grew up, little town, you were Ashford, I guess?
No, just to the north. It's
We're on Highway O. We're,
Okay. Who lives in his own.
yeah, the other going off the other.
I just. Yeah.
Probably 16. I was down there, I mean, but yeah, it's on site, and I just, all farm field.
Yeah, it was, they bought the land, I think it was like 2.5 acres. He actually bought it.
I just didn't know that was, that's why I kind of said,
They're okay, high school.
take it back, get track back. That's
Everything else, truck it over there. It's treated. They tried to transport it back, but I did, but it got treated. Contaminant, and they, unless we killed it, promised to bring it back. They reported it as treated then. Back in Ohio. That's how I did. Like it was mobile. Yes, yes, yes.
I was suspicious of why they kept that.
So long. I married Jody. Why would you keep so long?
That's why.
82, we got.
It's not as much Saudi as
It's just funny, we were just at dinner with.
Everybody back?
Thanks.
Back ready?
sometimes.
Okay. On 14, correct?
Do 16 was.
Yeah, we're gonna move it to 16.
Is it, permission of the plan commission members and ETZ, are we moving 16 up?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Okay. Item 16, project number 2021-02225, Emmanuel Castillo requesting a special exception to allow the use of non-conforming sign within the B2 business, highway business zoning district at 3406 Schofield Avenue, PIN number 192-2808-174-0987. This is for the plan commission.
So this sign's come up in the past, just in regards to use. So in our current code, non-conforming, which a lot of that's set by state, so we're trapped in state statute. A non-conforming structure, non-conforming use that's not used for 12 months, the way our code is written, isn't allowed to be used further. However, the way our code is also written, you can request a special exception, which is what's been requested to essentially reapprove signs as if it was being reinstalled. So the case with this sign, we've got a 15-foot sign that's only approximately 5 to 7 feet from the lot line. Our code requires all signs be set back from the lot line equal to their heights. So hypothetically, this sign should have been 15 feet from the lot line. However, this is an older sign, you know, it's got a lot of history to it. So the request is.
2 lanes wide when it was put up.
Okay.
The road was only 2 lanes wide when it was put up.
Correct, right, and it's, you know, it's not necessarily anyone's fault as to why this is now non-conforming. There's things just kind of as code changes, there's never any usually malice around it. So the request has come forward to be able to put a sign on this existing pole sign, and the special exception is the way to do it. So the request is essentially to request approval for this sign. Staff, you know, has looked at it, I've talked with the sign installer. We recommend approval of it. We just ask one condition, that the reader board that's not being used be removed off the pole sign, which the sign company did say that is possible to do. So any questions or comments from, and the applicant representative from Avali is here if there's any questions for them.
The plan commission have any questions for the applicant?
So is the existing,
Oh, right here.
Did they submit the plan, how it looked, the sign gonna look?
That's what this is.
No.
After.
This is a new sign?
That's the new sign, it's just photoshopped on top.
Yeah, they superimposed,
Photoshop.
they superimposed. It would be double-sided.
Except that the recommendation from staff is to remove the reader board.
Right.
So the blank space there was actually added after probably around 2004, when we went through, and there used to be all those rolling temporary message boards all over the village. Those were all given violation letters and removed, and then some of them got affixed, I think.
Reader board for reminder.
So that was an after the fact add. It's not being used. It's recommended to have that, remove that when they install the sign. And Bruce Flora has said that that is okay. Easily done.
Does the applicant wish to say something?
Anything to add, like to say?
Don't have to. You don't have to.
It's not required, it's okay.
You want, no? You want to?
Okay. Plan Commission,
Make a motion to approve.
a motion by Manel,
Second.
second by Garen to approve.
But you want to,
Allowing us, should I read that off?
I would suggest so.
Okay, I make a motion to approve the special acceptance request number 2021-0225, allowing for the pole sign within 7 feet of the lot line at 3604 Schofield Avenue, with the condition that the lower reader board is removed from the pole.
Your motion?
Second.
Second? Who seconded?
second.
Mr. Garen. On the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So carried. Now, back to item 14.
Thank you for your patience.
Good job.
Thank you.
Okay, proposed changes to chapter 94, article 13 signs. This is for the P and the ETZ.
All right, so apologies it took so long to get this. This code's kind of been a lot of fun to take a attempt at. So as we've discussed, there's the Reed versus Gilbert Supreme Court case from 2015, which doesn't allow municipalities to regulate signage based off their content. We can regulate font type, so if it's freestanding or monument, or if it's an H frame, if it's temporary, if it's permanent, how big it is, setbacks, location, and we can regulate a little bit of commercial versus residential, and that's more in a zoning district than a content standpoint. So I've done a first attempt at updating the sign code, which if you look at the red line and bouncing back to Unicode having, there's gonna be a lot of pages here. And I apologize, Jen pointed out, I didn't quite do the red line perfectly, so there's a little funkiness with numbers, with the numbering. So like deleting, there's like 1 through 6, nothing there. Those are all deleted. So there's major slashing of this code. Essentially the biggest things was touching the temporary signs is really where it becomes really tricky to regulate, not based on content. As currently we've got political signs, we've got real estate signs, we've got residential one-time signs, we've got welcome signs, we've got congratulatory signs, we've got construction signs. And technically we can't regulate based off all this content. So it became temporary residential signs and temporary commercial signs have been how it's basically been conglomerated into. I have sent this to Matt Eady just to take a look. Wausau redid their code and did leave some content to theirs. So I'm questioning if I can take a step back and actually put a little bit more content regulating in, maybe real estate signs. That's the hardest part of doing temporary signs is those real estate signs. There are so many different sizes and they're a little harder to regulate, just they pop up all the time. So with temporary signs, it's limited to a certain size as well as a certain number. And talking with with Mark Roffers as well for suggestions, temporary signs in association with a real estate transaction is kind of a way to get around it, that those are basically unlimited time for those, whereas all other temporary signs would be limited for a 30-day period with a removal of 30 days and then back on the site for 30 days. And, go ahead.
Some of it is how much we want to potentially open ourselves up to someone coming and challenging it. So when that originally happened in 2015, they really didn't look at all aspects of sign codes. So they really put us in a hard spot. So some of this may affect businesses in a way that we can't do anything about.
Or didn't
intend to. Because we really can't look at it and, we had temporary price signs, or if they were grand opening, things like that, we can't read the sign now. So it's basically to be on number and size. So it has to be on how comfortable you are with how many at a certain location. That's really all we can do. So yes, it's been a struggle. Emily's done a good job with this, but there's all kinds of there was the Realtors Association got involved in it because they were trying to get some things so that their realty signs weren't affected. That happened like a year or two after the code. So you'll see communities that have, we knew about this when we actually did this in 2015 because it kind of came out at the same time. So we kind of brought it better than our old code was, but we haven't taken it far enough. A lot of this did come up because of the political signs, because there's a lot of them still out there, and we've not been able to do anything regulating them, so.
Other than if they're in the right of way or they're.
Yeah, so if you looked at how it should be done, anybody who puts a political sign in a commercial area should be getting a sign permit for those. And so they basically can only be out there for 30 days, because we can't look at what it is, we just look at it as it's a sign at the business. But most communities just kind of look the other way during the, election season. I did find an article from 2012 that was brought up in the city of Wausau, where they kind of brought up the fact that the election laws actually only are for and residential areas on how long you can keep them up. So.
Are any signs that we have in the village now, would they be currently illegal if this should pass?
Anything temporary, if they have it over the number, they may have to remove a few signs depending on I can't tell you exactly. I'm sure there are.
My plan with this, if this was approved, however, it's whatever version, would be to send a letter to all the businesses just saying, hey, there's been a major sign code. You've whatever time period, temporary signs, I have 30 here, Plan Commission wants 60, if they want whatever. Your sign from the state is now good for whatever time that is, and then this is the new procedure going forward. Because this is such a drastic code change that would affect businesses.
So I would suggest you also send it to the companies that make these signs. Like scenic signs, so they know, they have customers that come in, they wanna sell a sign, they don't this one isn't gonna work. And I imagine it's really difficult for them to deal with all the different plans, different zoning codes and everything, but I understand most of these changes are related to this state Supreme Court.
What's spearheaded it, yeah?
Most of the change. Questions by Plan Commission?
I did see on, the executive summary from the attorney that he talked about the state code has, exceptions during the campaign period, election campaign period. Is it considered, restricting political speech when you restrict something to a campaign period that's not defined?
That's only residential, I believe, that he was referencing.
The state code's also really out of date as well. They haven't touched it since, I believe, the 2000s.
Like you said, I see the signs still up today. So would that be affected? Are you saying they would now become illegal?
Well, it's been a touchy subject since probably the day after the election.
It would depend on whether that's a temporary sign. They can make a decision if they want to have that as a permanent sign instead of advertising their business, couldn't they, under this?
We can't
current
read,
code?
that's the thing, we can't
regulate
read
the
what's on
content.
the sign, so they essentially, if we make the regulation that they get so much on their building.
No, we're talking residential.
So the new code on residential is you get 2 temporary signs, combined total 12 square feet. You can say whatever you want. I love Girl Scout cookies, I support the Scouts, whichever, Democrat, Republican, whatever, rainbows and unicorns, whatever you wanna say. Obviously, hate speech, we're going into police matters at that point. Right, as Jen's saying, we can't read it, so whatever they wanna say, if they wanna have an election sign, political sign up for 365 days, for 5 years, the same, they want a 2000 election sign.
So it's limited to 2 and a total square feet of 12.
12, correct, so that could be 1 banner of 12 square feet, it could be 2 H frames.
Okay.
Be a 3x4 sign if you wanted to have one that was 12 square feet.
That's what Wausau does, is the 2 signs at 12 square feet. So that's where that came from.
But now if you're in a commercial area,
So we used to allow different kinds, so you could have, like, they fell into different categories and they had different timeframes. Some of them we didn't have a permit on at all. So now it's basically, I would say, we're gonna probably have a permit for them, and we're just looking at numbers and size.
Actually, was not gonna do a permit
not
because
doing
of the
a
real estate signs throw a wrench into that.
Say that again?
So it won't be a permit for temporary signs anymore.
For commercial.
so just for conversation, I'm just gonna use the building I'm in as an example, because we applied for the sign permit that already occupies every bit of real estate sign-wise that we can on that building.
Yep.
So Trav could not put a political sign out in front of that building because he's already maxed out in the
There's
square footage.
different, so that would be your
Yeah.
sign would be on your building, that's a different
Okay,
category.
and that's what I was asking. I wasn't sure if it was just like,
It's still not changing any of those, this mostly
Okay.
changed the
Temporary.
temporary signage.
okay.
So
They
like,
changed some of the verbiage of.
I wasn't sure if the temporary signage, I guess, rolled in with whatever signage was on your building. Like if you
no,
chose,
they're still gonna be separate, so, but it's just that you can have your monument sign, you can have so much on your building.
I mean, theoretically, if you wanted to put a permanent sign for an election campaign, that's just eating into your business sign, like we couldn't regulate that if you put a permanent election sign on your building.
Right now, we have nothing on temporary sign permits, is that?
We do.
We do, but it's not, the Supreme Court case kind of,
Smashed that.
yeah.
Doesn't
We
need
need to
to.
regulate them all the same, but regardless of context, so that's what this was aimed to do, is to get this code so it's consistent, and we can.
The term that came out of the Supreme Court was content neutral. So if you have to read the sign to know how to regulate it, so the Reed versus Gilbert was basically, there was ideological signs, so a church was trying to put signs up and around the same time that an election was happening. And the case was that the church could not do as many or as big a sign as the political signs were allowed to do, so they got upset that why were they being regulated differently than political signs. So that's kind of where the matter comes from, is you can't regulate freedom of speech differently for different topics. And so we now have to lump them all together as a temporary sign.
So, Mr. Gary,
go ahead, I'm
so
concerned.
quick question, just to verify. Just down the road here, we have a sign on a billboard that says Trump. How long can, with the new code, how long can that stay up?
So billboards are a little different. They're not really.
It's not a billboard.
It's not a billboard.
On a 4x8, I'm not saying billboard, it's a.
Oh.
It's just a,
That
it'd
would-
be considered a temporary
It's a ground mounted
sign, because it's
30
not
days.
permanent.
Right, Mary, it's 30 days, he's gotta come for a permit for, and it's 30 days.
Right now, theoretically, that's how the code would be written. With the new proposal, it would be 30 days, and then with no permit, it would have to be taken down, and then it could go back up for another 30 days after 30 days has passed.
So 30 days, he takes it down a day, it can put it back up for.
It'll be up longer because, well, regulating it, we wouldn't, from whenever we noticed, oh, this has been up there to beyond 30 days, then somebody would take a picture, and then we would probably wait 30 days to start enforcement on
Take
it.
it down a day and turn around and put it back up.
Nope, it would be
No.
come down for 30 days.
Permit again.
Well, there is no permit, she's saying.
She's proposing no permit. Right now, we would have a permit.
Because otherwise you'd have to require permits for sale signs, and I am not getting into that. Unless you want to. If plan commission wants to
So-
permit for sale signs, go for it.
Don't have enough to do? So you confused me with what because you had said that if we pass this, you would have to either choose between a political sign or promoting your business. So I guess I'm confused on,
You only get the number of signs. You're only getting a certain number of signs that's being based off of your land use. Whatever your zoning district is, she's got a number there.
Okay.
If
So you could have one on your
signs of a
building?
certain size, that's all you get for a temporary.
So you can have one on your building and then you can have one,
So you're getting confused between permanent signage and temporary signage. So
Okay.
permanent signage is what you took out the permit for.
sure.
That has your business name or is on a monument sign. The temporary signs that we're talking about would be those little ones that you would put in, like you would see at an election or an
Banner sign.
A-frame or a banner.
Well, some of them are put up on 4x4s.
4x8s.
Right,
And
same
and those
thing.
are temporary because they're not they're not permanently fixed to the ground, they can be
Oh.
picked up and.
So that's where.
They are on 4x4s in the ground.
Right, but they're not on like a
Grade sheet.
cement base that a monument
Okay, okay.
sign is
So those are calculated separately
from your permanent sign.
from the permanent signs?
Yep.
Okay,
So, and
but are
I
you still in total allowed to only have a certain amount of signs between your permanent and your temporary?
they're regulated separately.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
It tends to be on the size of the building.
I probably had the confusion of my comments.
It's, I'm just trying to understand this, so.
And this is not at public hearing, so you don't have to make a motion.
Right.
We're just trying to bring this in front and get your ideas because we've struggled with this for a while, just because we know that it's gonna be confusing.
It'll be a hot.
It's not gonna be popular. But we get yelled at about the political signs out there right now, so.
Just a question, two questions. Yeah, I might have missed it when I took a little break there. Anything on hiring? What about all the hiring signs? Did we talk about that already?
It would just be considered a temporary sign.
So permits, I mean, cause sometimes you'll see.
She's saying no permits
Oh,
for any
okay,
of that?
so I can put 20 of them across my
no,
front line.
because it
Fall
would
under
have,
quantities.
yeah, there would be a quantity.
But that's what's out there right now.
Based on your zoning.
Yeah, hiring is out everywhere. I mean, they're putting hiring on top of their permanent
So,
sign, you know?
I suppose we should explain too,
Okay,
we have not been enforcing the sign code to the way that we had prior to COVID, just because a lot of it was businesses that really needed to have that stuff out there. So we had taken a lax approach on that, basically while we were all still out of the office last year, and just have kind of not done anything with that. And then the whole issue came up with the political signs this fall, and we knew we needed to address that sign code. It's just been kind of percolating in there. We're trying to make it so that we're not hurting businesses, but yeah, they do tend to put, right now we have a limit that they're supposed to have, I think it's 2 per.
yeah, my point on the hiring is it's so intense and it's so much, I don't see it.
Yeah.
I don't see it. And I assume when I go through anywhere that everybody is hiring, everybody. And there just isn't enough bodies to do those jobs. So that was my one question, so we do have something on that. The other one is, in some of our bigger communities, if you go around, you'll see walking. Does this go to the walking, which is walking considered temporary, where you have a banner on each of you and you walk up and down the street?
Oh.
If you see more and more of that, you probably won't see it here, but you'll see that some of the pizza places.
Yeah.
You'll see that at the tax place.
One guy in particular that does that.
Little Caesars, you'll see it at the
I
tax
don't think
place.
we've ever had anything with that.
Okay, I mean, cause I think that, they think it's helping, I don't know if it really, it's more of a distraction than anything.
So you wanna charge permit fee on?
I don't know.
Sign spinners?
Yeah, I
Do
don't
you
know.
want to be a sign spinner?
No, I do not, no, I couldn't handle it.
So just to
Okay.
kind of, and I apologize, the red line did not show up in this code. So for temporary signs for non-residential zoned property, they would be permitted up to 64 square foot sign, no higher than 12 feet per use. So if it's a single business on a single property, regardless of if it's a corner or whatnot, we get one large sign. If there's two, if it's a tenant building, they could have up to 2. And then smaller signs of no more than 6 square feet shall be limited to 2 signs per street frontage. So if Plan Commission would like to make that 10, so you could have all the hiring signs, totally go for it. That's like the third sentence from the bottom. Michael, if you wanted to highlight that.
And that's for non-residential.
That's for non-residential, correct. So that would be for Target, that would be for Lockery's complex, that would be for, basically anything on Schofield Ave.
And residential
industrial.
was the same thing, you can only have 2.
Residential for temporary signs, you could have 2 with a combined total of 12 square feet.
Smaller size.
Does rental go in with real estate sale or not?
So for like 4 rent signs?
Yeah, like Lockery has a couple.
Or now leasing, you'll see now leasing signs.
Right.
They would fall under that 64 square foot.
Oh, they would, okay.
And that's where it got tricky, because I was thinking of permitting temporary like business signs, but then how do I distinguish that from for lease, for sale? You can't without reading, so.
Go ahead. I think you're gonna
Personally,
say the
I
same
think
thing.
that limiting residential people to 2 temporary signs limits their free speech. And I could see us getting sued on that.
So the Supreme Court said quantity is fine to regulate, but if you wanna put it to 3 or 4, or if you wanna make it 64 square feet.
I just think that we shouldn't be regulating political speech, period.
But we can't regulate any speech. Just the sign. So it doesn't matter what that sign is.
Right.
It's
Say happy
two.
birthday.
It's, yep,
You know.
Stash graduate or wrong school district, sorry, DC Everest.
Is there complaints?
Who are you? Who are you?
Are there complaints other than political speech? Have you received sign complaints?
For now hiring signs or
Garage
little,
sales.
yeah.
Garage sales is a big one, but that's usually because it's in the right of way.
You specifically asked for, political?
No,
She
I
said
said
other than political.
outside of
Other than
political
political, okay.
signs, have you received any complaints? What problem are we trying to solve, I guess?
Well, we're trying to make the sign code meet the Supreme Court ruling.
We're currently not conforming with that and we could get sued by anyone.
And it
Regulating
brought up
civic
because of the political stuff
It's brought up because of the political thing.
as well.
Okay.
Right, because we couldn't approach the people who were violating
You had no regulation.
because I had no.
I understand having a limit, I guess. Just, I think two is too small. I mean, you look at some election cycles, you've got someone running for president, governor. You could have Senate, Congress. I mean, you could have 5 different candidates that you want to support that all are gonna have individual signs, and you're telling me I have to pick 2 to put in my yard. That's just my 2 cents.
That's good. I didn't think of that. Yep, that's a good.
I think 2 is too, I think that number needs to change.
But where do you stop? You wanna just say unlimited or just don't put a limit on it at all?
I don't know what's everybody else think.
I don't know, how many people do we see with unlimited signs in their front yard?
Not very many.
Yeah, most people give a crap what they.
And if you pay for them yourself, they're kind of expensive.
Most of those signs, you gotta buy them anyway, or you gotta go make a donation to the cause, to get the sign.
I think the limit I've seen is 5. I think I've seen 5 in one residential lot.
I think 5 would be a good number. I tend to agree.
Is there a recommendation from the League of Municipalities or is there any other,
They don't wanna touch it.
they don't want, no, they don't make.
I gave her something I found for,
Curious on what they're.
like, from the APA that had talked about it early on, but they,
regurgitated Supreme Court's.
nobody really, some communities just ignore it and hope somebody doesn't take them to court on it. I mean, if you look at a majority of it, they don't,
I can see
they don't
somebody
change it.
picking a fight on the political side. I can see that happening. Because people.
Well, and that's what we got all the time, was
Right.
your ordinance, and actually, like Sherry's ordinance was different than our sign code ordinance on things. So it wasn't even really us that were regulating underneath it.
It still prohibits, political campaign signs within a such and such distance of polling place, though.
Yes.
Still, permanent, that prohibits that.
Right,
And that's her code.
That's a state
That's
statute,
the-
and her code.
I think it's within it has to be so many feet from the entrance to the polling
Yeah,
place,
it's
not
like-
necessarily on the property or.
Can you put it like a
Have it on
stipulation?
Weston Lanes, even though that was a polling.
Can we put a stipulation that they can be any size if we can put out Husheng for president or something?
Only if you spell his name right.
Couldn't find anybody else?
Oh, I had to make it funny.
Attempt at humor, Gary?
Yeah.
We just need to get something that when somebody does call and complain at us, usually if we
Give something.
give them something back that this is why.
And I know they didn't like the answer that we can't do anything about it.
Yeah, that wasn't a good answer.
Cause yeah, right now the code was written, no restriction, nothing.
Well, you could tell them to see the Supreme Court then.
And that was always how we answered and they
Yeah.
did not like that.
Right to your Supreme Court.
Yeah, we don't like it either.
Is it gonna be a win-win situation?
Well,
It's not a win.
we had a few of them kind of quit talking when we told them, we're doing exactly the same thing we did 4 years ago. And I thought that was probably one of the best answers to some of the real heavy repeaters, is that we're handling this election just like 4 years ago, exactly. And then all of a sudden, oh, okay. You know, because you saw a lot of, Hillary signs up for a long time. It didn't bother me, not at all. This time around, it bothered people to the point that it was so offensive they couldn't drive down the road. So,
Don't, choose a different route.
well, that's not where we're gonna go. I mean, you know, Jen was getting them and Keith and I wasn't gonna say that back, I just said, we're handling it the same way we did 4 years ago.
Oh, how politically wise, Mike.
Yeah.
So all
I mean,
this
this isn't set in stone either, so we could try something out, see how it works. The code can be ever changing.
is the plan of the ETZ have enough time to look at this to make a decision, or do you think you wanna have this come back at another meeting?
I just lost my train of thought.
Who's the enforcer?
It's that old.
Letter?
Is it, who's the, you guys seen the issues with, I mean, you guys have problems up by you?
I don't see it. Which would be cool.
Probably Roman, Scott.
I remember this. So right now with temporary, if you classify a political sign as a temporary sign, how long can it, is it 30 days that it can stay up?
No limit for political signs.
But if we're gonna,
Commercial property, commercial.
There's no limit. It's
Okay.
code says unrestricted.
Yeah.
But you say there's no limit for political, I'm not jumping on your throat. The point of doing this is to make, we can't look at the content, so we can't classify them as political signs. So my point is, if we pass this, how long can a temporary sign stay up regardless of what it is?
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Apologies. I thought you meant like.
No, it's okay.
Proposed. Okay.
Yeah.
So correct. So if someone, it's a political time, it's 2022, whenever the next election is. You know, someone wants, a commercial property wants to put a sign up, they put one up 30 days. And then the way the code is written, it would have to come down for 30 days. And then they can do it for another 30 days. And then it would come down for 30 days and go back
Just
up.
playing devil's advocate, if the election's November 6th, they can put a sign up on October 6th, and that's all they can do. They can't have one up any sooner. Well, I mean, they could, but they would have to take it
They
down.
would have to take it down. And the way our political system is in the United States, things always go up in March. And
So
so
what if the sign changes?
if they put up a new sign,
Yeah, what if you say party? This is one letter. Yeah, they just changed.
It's a
the
different
So you
sign.
take one
it's a different
down.
sign technically, if you wanna keep buying new signs,
So-
yeah.
Or put a sticker on it.
Yeah, I'm just saying that
We're giving people too many hints.
You know, I was gonna say, if it's that easy, maybe we don't need an ordinance. Really,
Well-
if people.
Let's scrap the entire zoning code if we're gonna go that route.
Well, no, I'm just saying I mean, I think we know who would change the sign if they had to take one down for 30 days.
I mean, we can add a sentence that just kind of, a substantial change, a substantial, that's a good point, I hadn't thought of.
But you can put your,
You can't read it,
You can't, right, you can't.
Remember that.
Thank you. This is where this starts getting really hard, right?
So it's a.
So, right, it would be
same
any
size,
sign.
the-
Right, regardless of you changing the content, it would be
It has
30
to be
days
down
on.
for 30 days.
Thank you, yep, that's in my brain.
you know, it's just like mowing, it's just like landscaping, Randy, you're next. Does Roman and Scott have time for this? You know, the officers don't have time to do some of the stuff we'd like them to do. They don't. Do we actually have time right now to enforce this? I would say no.
Right now, we do pull some of those H signs that we go around.
Yeah.
When we do, we'll go out and do yard enforcement, for example, one day a week, we try to do stuff like that.
You pull an H sign without telling them?
If it's in the right of way.
Oh, right
Well,
away.
and then.
Roundabout on Ross.
Affect right of way. So if there's a sign in the right of way, those are, if it's attached to a pole, those are free game. They're
Randy.
coming here.
Michael had a comment.
Randy did too.
Michael?
Oh, I was just mentioning, since you're not supposed to be able to read the sign, switching out the name or something on a sign
Shouldn't matter.
because it's just a sign that was out there.
Randy, you had something
So how do the flags fall into this?
different. Cool. Do you like the American flag?
Well, now the other
A political
football flag, a political flag.
Good question.
We don't regulate flags as a sign, at least the way the code is written.
Because we're more flexible with
It
flags.
is a category, you could regulate flags if you wish to, I would recommend not touching flags. Obviously flutter flags, we don't allow, like the ones that are tall with the piece that do the fun things.
The balloon guys.
The balloon guys we don't allow.
Label guys?
But your typical rectangular on a pole, if you put it up against a wall, I would say that's a banner at that point and it's no longer a flag because you're not flying it. But that's a good question.
Okay, all right.
So let's go back to what is the problem we're trying to solve? Somebody's calling and complaining about a political sign still being up.
So ultimately, what we're trying to do is bring the code into content neutral conformity with the Supreme Court case, so we don't get sued as a municipality for regulating signs.
Well,
Technically, because we can't regulate.
I understand that you put into this, Emily, the reality is that there is no good way to regulate this. You know, and when I say that, again, the nuances of what you could do to work outside of whatever it is that we write, you know, and I've always said that, you know, when you look at the code, the regulations that we have anywhere in the country, it's the guys, you know, and again, don't take this the wrong way, but it seems to be that who writes 900 pages of legislation? It's somebody that went to college that probably came out of there with a 2.0, you know, grade point average. And then all of the guys that had a 3.5 or 4.0, what are they doing? They're working for these guys that are figuring out, well, how am I gonna work around what those guys just wrote? And it almost seems senseless to me to try and pursue something that somebody can then just easily work around by changing it from Trump Pence to Pence Trump. You know, I mean, define what a different sign is, you know, I mean, it's.
So technically, we just did define that the content, changing content, you can't read it anyway, so you would have to literally change size or some other component of the sign.
But if we put in the code that you can't change content,
And I missed.
theoretically, you're still
said that.
judging the sign based off the content, so how do you?
Can't do that.
You can't do that.
Well, I'll just take a circular saw, cut a quarter inch off my,
Can you limit-
my sign then.
Can you limit signage to the associated event?
Crazy.
In other words, can you say, we're gonna limit political signs to no more than 6 months prior to the election and no more than 30 days post-election?
And that's something the consultant had suggested, and I did put a version of that in here.
I mean, doesn't most of this come down to the political arena versus anything else?
Yep.
It is the big
So
component.
you can limit the time period that you can put up those kind of signs.
So you also go back to, and right, you could limit it to an event, but you still have to read the sign to know if it's around that event, is where I have issue with that. So what if you don't have, right? It's tricky, it's tricky. I mean, we could totally scrap temporary signs and not have any regulations if that's how you guys feel. And we could just do
I'm just trying to figure out if there's a way you can say, you know, 6
Yeah.
months, 30 days, that's it.
And that's,
What your sign is,
there should be the whole, in association with real estate transactions is kind of how I got around with it for allowing real estate signs to be longer. I didn't really want to touch it with political or other campaigns, but, so you could kind of do that with real estate transactions if they show, hey, my property's for sale, this is why my sign's up longer, here's the listing.
So I gather from the discussion that's going on that this issue is probably not gonna be settled this evening. So I would entertain a motion to defer. Michael, do you have a comment?
I just had a quick question. So is there a definition of a time period that distinguishes temporary?
No.
You know, is 90 days temporary, is 120 days temporary?
It's the structure itself, so
Okay.
it's not permanently affixed onto the wall, or it's like a monument or a pole sign that's cemented into the
So I
ground.
mean, is there a longer time frame, you know, that maybe makes it so, I don't know, just thinking out loud, you know, is 120 days maybe more acceptable? Because that would cover kind of an election period, you know, for.
Can you have a temporary sign, require a temporary sign to have a removal date on all those temporary signs? Point being is that after that date, whether it's political or not, that's the date that it has to be removed. You can set that. Saying that temporary signs can only be erected for 90 days and require that those signs have it printed. I think political signs, correct me if I'm wrong, but political signs, I think you have to have certain disclosures on there.
Paid for by,
It's something, I'm just wondering, can we regulate it by saying that temporary signs need to be removed within 120 days of being erected? And that has to be on there so that we can see, oh yeah, this has been hanging out here for 6 months, it's gone.
We could, it definitely adds to staff, you know, having to enforce all that. Also, real estate signs, You know, how do we?
Not excluding real estate. I don't think you're ever gonna get around doing that.
And that's why I had the question out to the attorney to see if maybe we can pull real estate signs out. And I need to follow up with him. I haven't heard back from him since I sent the code over. But, you know, that had been my thought, was to permit temporary signs, you know, to be able to control that time a little bit or know when it was put up. So then, okay, it's been up for this.
I don't think we want to be involved in that. What I'm saying is,
But then how do you set the date?
well, they set the date on when it's being
Are you
installed.
talking
It's
like
not-
having them put something on it?
I'm just saying that we don't need to, my concern is that we're gonna do something and then we're gonna be spending all this time trying to document whether it's should be out there or not, but if we require that on a sign, and I don't know what the alternatives are, but if you require a specific termination date on it, limiting it to 120 days, that gives you a drop dead date that shouldn't be out there.
Right, we could change that 30 days on, 30 days off.
And I don't know what
money
the answer is,
and-
I'm just saying it.
Yeah.
We're gonna go in circles on this,
Yeah.
and this is what, about the fourth or fifth time we've looked at it.
So staff's recommendation was just to bring this forward, and if you were comfortable with it, to take it to public notice next meeting. Does not need to happen. We can talk about this for the next year if you guys want to. Bring it back every single meeting and we can keep talking.
Mr. Cronin.
What you guys want.
I don't know what the rest, I mean, I almost think we should maybe look at deferring this and to a time when we can have Attorney Yee here to discuss this with us.
So a motion to defer would be appropriate if you wish to.
So I move to defer to I don't have a designated time. I would say staff needs to talk with Attorney Yee and figure out a time when he can be here to be part of this conversation.
Second.
Generally, deferral usually should have a specific time frame or a meeting. You can say.
For the next 3 months.
For the next 3 months.
Okay.
Next 3 meetings, yeah.
That you're amending your motion.
I'm amending my motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to defer for
3 months.
3 months.
And I'd also like to try and coordinate that with Attorney Yee.
Well, I think, I'm pretty sure staff will take care of it. We have a motion and a second on the question. All first.
Go ahead.
Question?
I just got a question for staff. Have we ever had anybody threaten to sue us since 2015?
I'm not aware. Colonel Witter has a really similar code and no one had
Okay.
approached Colonel Witter.
So we don't really have any issues if we leave it the way it is. We have a potential for being sued, the Attorney Edie say?
There's always the potential to be sued.
Yeah.
But, I mean, right, that is an option. If Plan Commission doesn't feel it, that it needs to be changed, you could leave it as is.
The easiest way would be just to eliminate temporary signs in language altogether and not regulate it because you can't enforce it. You don't have time to enforce it. Nobody wants to go out and enforce it.
But
Then you'd
takes
be-
us back like 20 years.
Pardon?
That takes us back quite a bit in the history of the village.
So
I spent a lot of time on temporary signage when I first got here, because I don't know if you guys remember, there was stuff everywhere.
So we have a motion and a second to defer for 3 months. Anything further on the question? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So carried, 3 months.
What's the ETZ committee want to do on signs? Further.
Let the village figure it out, then we'll come back. Does that need to be put into a form of motion?
Actually, you don't have to make a motion, whatever business item you're discussing dies for lack of a motion.
But essentially, whatever gets determined here would probably need to be looked at the town code then also.
Okay, moving right along, as Fred Schuster would say.
I move that, I will entertain a motion for the ETZ committee to adjourn.
You don't want
I'll second that. We have a motion that's, oh, no, who made
I'm
the,
asking for a motion to.
yeah, he's asking for a motion.
Adjourn.
And you can actually make the motion.
I'll make the motion. You second it.
I'll second that.
There been a motion, Milton and Steve seconded the ETZ committee to adjourn. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. ETZ is adjourned.
Thank you.
Am I on the ETZ? Am I an alternate? Am I an alternate?
You're released.
I'll buy the first one. Yeah.
Sorry for one late, guys.
Have a good evening.
Have a good evening, guys.
Thank you.
Item 15, project number 2021-0040, Tommy Dock site plan amendment to the lighting plan.
Thanks, Mark.
Staff.
All right, so this is more just administrative, as you guys were the ones who approved the Tommy Dock site plan and board acknowledged your approval, but they've amended their lighting plan to remove 2 pole lights from the plan. Staff cannot make this approval, so that's why it's brought back to Plan Commission. But essentially, they've removed 2 pole lights on the south side of the lot because as now that they have an electrical contractor, they don't want to have to cross the A&R gas line that goes right south of the building there. Staff's fine with the change. It meets code in regards to, code really only talks about parking areas. This isn't a parking area, so it doesn't need to be lit, so.
I move to recommend approval for the updated lighting plan for Tommy Dock at 8608 Progress Way.
I second. I have a motion by Garrett, second by Cronin. On the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So carried. Item 17, project number 2021-0077, discussion and action on a proposed final plat for the Hinter Springs subdivision.
All right, so Riverside and MTS have submitted the final plat for the proposed subdivision of Hinter Springs.
You wait now.
They're coming forward as a addition, not as a full plan. So there's 49 lots in this proposed southern half of the original preliminary plat. Does not include any of the duplexes or the multi-family, just 49 lots there. So come forward to review. There is the resolution that you'd be recommending to the board, which is in front of you. We're still making last minute tweaks to that, so apologies that did not make it into the packet, but that is before you with the conditions to recommend forward to village board for next week, and they would be required to meet those.
More lots, less lots?
It's less lots than the full preliminary, and theoretically the rest of it should come most likely next year.
So it's,
They're doing it in
It'll be
pieces.
2 phases.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is just the south half essentially. Here's the 40 line on the top here.
That's the, what side is that?
The north.
Commission members,
It's the south side of the preliminary.
discussion?
Do we need an approval on this? Or is this?
Recommend you recommend the resolution to,
I'll make a motion to approve the final plat of Hinter Springs subdivision.
Do you care to name the resolution?
The resolution.
apology, yeah, it's,
The resolution number 2021-021,
If
Thank
we
you.
recommend that the board of trustees approve.
or that the board of trustees approves.
Good job. We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mumford. On the question.
This does have the sidewalks?
yes,
Good-
you have
good-
sidewalks
good
on both
question.
sides, everything, yep. It's everything that you guys said for preliminary plat,
On both sides.
on both sides. With the 24-foot pavement. Mark,
24 back to back.
there we go, with the sidewalks on both sides.
Great.
Good question.
Anything else on the question?
It's okay.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So carried.
Asphalt width.
The-
Thanks for sticking around for that, Mark.
Thank you for delaying this so I could get here for my earlier meeting.
Oh, we knew you needed a little time to get here.
Thank you, good night.
You need some help getting home there, Mark?
All
right, I'll try not to.
5-hour energy to get home?
right, I'm done talking for the night, so.
Okay, item 18. No, you're not. We're gonna
Said the same thing.
authorization to set public hearing for
She is done.
project plan amendments for tax increment district TID 2.
There's a couple of hard copy handouts, a map of part of TID 2. If people want that for this discussion, I guess we can distribute these or otherwise I
I thought it did it back. I'll print off the other half.
The process document is in the packet though. that's what's there right now. If you want a hard copy of that, we have that as well.
So, yeah, I can.
I guess, so on Friday, the joint review board met, which is, the joint review board is the body of the taxing authorities that are represented within the boundaries of our TIDs, or any one of our TIDs. So for us, that's simply the village, county of Marathon County, Central Technical College, or I'm sorry, yeah, NTC. NTC Everett getting handy on this, just pass it on. How's that? NTC. DC Everett School District.
Under village projects,
Village.
TID
Did I
amendment.
get them all?
Close enough.
Anyway, so that, the meeting on Friday was to introduce the process of our proposal to move forward with a amendment to tax increment district number 2. So the map that you have is actually only about the west half.
I'll print off the other one.
The west half of TID number 2 that runs along Schofield Avenue from essentially the village boundary on the west to Birch Street on the east. So I think we get up to maybe Alderson Street on this map.
Yes.
I guess what got us to this point is probably 2 years ago or so, under President Sparks, we were asked to take a look at the condition of TID 2, what kind of capacity we had for, or if we had additional indebtedness, was it feasible to retire it even? Looking at what the impact, the fiscal impact may have been to retire it, but then also kind of coming out of that review, we realized that there was still some debt to be paid off, and that would be, it could be retired in this next year or two. But there was also a realization that there's some financial capacity to take on other projects that may be advantageous to TID 2. Now, I guess we kind of got slowed down because of perhaps focusing on tax increment district number 1. But also we kind of got hamstrung, I think everybody did last year, 2020, kind of slowed a lot of things down. We couldn't hold public hearings. We did talk with the board about this though later in the year of 2020. There was a sentiment that was expressed that we should look at some of the potential for using financial capacity in TID 2 for site redevelopment, purchasing land. And those two activities really, we didn't feel after looking at it with our consultants, that was Ellers, our financial consultant, and also Mark Roppers, that our project plan wasn't sufficiently explicit to authorize those activities to take place. The main things that were being done in TID 2 were related to aesthetics of building fronts and aesthetics of the public right-of-way with the landscape project. That was done under Administrator Zuliger. So in order for us to be able to proceed with this new directive or new direction that was being given by the village board, the thing that needs to take place is amend the tax increment district project plan. And that project plan is the guideline or the, I guess, the authority that, the thing that will give us the authority to make decisions on funding certain projects within tax increment district number 2. So the process then to address, this amendment, and the project plan amendment is not considered a formal amendment or one of the amendments that are allowed under the statutes. We cannot add property to any one of our TIDs because we are over the level of equalized value within them in total. 12%, I believe, is the state statute limitation on equalized value within your TIDs. I think we're in the range of 20 at this point. So the only thing we could really do is is make a subtraction from any one of our TIDs. Of course, being careful that we wouldn't take out too much and then hamper our ability to pay back any remaining debt. So I guess maybe that's kind of a attempt at overview of where we are with this, but our next step after this, at the meeting with the joint review board on Friday, then is to bring the same proposal into the plan commission, who would then conduct a public hearing to entertain the proposed project plan amendment. The project plan amendment is actually still a work in progress, and the intent was to have this project plan ready by, I think, the last week of the month.
By the time the notice has to go out.
Before the notice goes out, and it's what is it, 10-day notice or 14-day notice?
2 weeks.
It's a 14-day notice prior to the meeting, at which point then the public, plan commission, everyone would have a look at what that project plan is. Staff has discussed, well, I guess the project plan amendment would include potential infrastructure projects. And also, I think, to address the need that was discussed or the desire that was discussed by the village board, we would also include the ability to purchase land and offer development incentives for redevelopment of land or preparing land for development, those types of things. Again, those latter items rather than, and even the infrastructure projects specifically are not explicit in the plan currently. So these are things that would be, making these projects, I guess, legal, if you will, under the TIF law.
Legal and feasible for a developer to do.
Now, we are gonna be, I guess, the thought process and the philosophy is that we list projects, knowing that we're not necessarily gonna have the financial capacity to perform them all. We may say these are higher priorities as we go into it, but we wanted some flexibility, just like we did in TID 1, to be able, depending on what opportunities may present themselves, to be able to propose funding for those projects. So again, we would be listing development incentives or land purchases generically, not necessarily identifying a specific property. Now, part of that was the reason for moving forward with the Schofield Avenue corridor plan, kind of identifying what some of the priorities might be there, or what some of the target areas might be, but we're not committing ourselves through this project plan to any expenditure in any project or, again, depending on the timing of what may happen that we can't necessarily predict. I know we have talked about a couple projects that are kind of on the burner. One from Raleigh Lockery by Cutoff Road, but we haven't still seen any proposal there, I guess. So we would envision a project like that being a candidate for some of this funding. The initial financial analysis right now indicates that if we keep TID 2 open through its closure period of, I guess it's through the end of, through 2031.
We can only expend funds through 2026.
We can only expend them, but if we have certain agreements or projections on knowing that there would be additional, we're gonna be taking in additional tax increment through the end of the closure period, we can make commitments to pay that during that last 10 years if those are made at the time of the expenditure period expires. So the initial financial analysis right now is that there'd be $8.5 million of capacity through the closure period of this TID to utilize for projects. So the intent in this project plan then is to identify a list of infrastructure projects, and then, the general or generic use for incentives or land purchases and redevelopment. Again, as time and the opportunities may present. So that's, I guess that's my overview. I don't know if I'm sounding a bit rambly here, but, been a long day.
There
Yeah.
is also a change to the boundary. Michael, can you bring up the one that says deletion? Boundary add delete, I think that's the one that kind of shows.
Did you have to expand any areas, Jen, when you deleted, or you cannot?
We can't expand, but we can delete. So when they created this, they were property owners, so we have a couple parcels here. There's actually 3 parcels, but we're only going to remove, well, we are removing 3. There's 4 parcels where there could be some issues. But that one is in between 21 and 27 on your map. I think it's Gold Key Investments and maybe one of Kenny Brzezinski's properties. They own the properties in the back, so they're a bigger site. So they would be removed from the TIF district.
Why do you want to remove it? I'm sorry.
You can't, so we'll talk about the other one, because this is where it's come up. The one that Laporte's own on the corner is just this little tiny one. I can't combine properties, so whenever anybody looks at that, because that property's in the TIF and the other 2 they own are not, they have to get super creative on how they develop their site. So in the case of Lockery's property on Cutoff, he's looking at adding a sliver of land, which would be that house. He's gonna purchase some of that house to do the project that he would like to do. We can't add that parcel because it's not in the TIF. So he's going to actually have to come in and do like a planned unit development there because of it, because that is outside of the TIF. I cannot add that little sliver of land into those 4 other parcels until that TIF closes. It's just the way the TIF laws work and how they tax.
So then how do you work with them on that particular project?
As a planned unit development, so the fact that we have that now, we have a way out on that.
Okay.
But so the other parcels, it's just easier to remove, like, we worked with a gas station on the Laporte property and they were having to like put the certain pieces of the project outside of that little sliver. It's just a tiny, if there's the houses there.
Can you still utilize the TIF if you do?
Yeah, so what is being talked about is to put some language in there if the board so chooses to allow those properties still to utilize TIF funds if they need it. We don't know if those will ever develop or not.
You don't know unless you have the ability to.
Right, so we wanna just make sure, just because we'll actually, all these people will be noticed too, and they know they're in the TIF, so giving that if they do want.
Let's say the one across the road, what happens if Raleigh decides he wants to buy, or any developer wants to buy the one across the road that's pulled out of it right now? Are they just stiffed? Or,
They still all have to meet the but for test. I mean, you can expand TIF.
I realize that, but are they, being that they own property in the backside of that, if that were ever be under redevelopment, they couldn't come for any TIF funding for that, if they have to do demolition on all these buildings or whatever it may be, they couldn't, because now they
You can
got,
expend it up to a half a mile,
Oh, you-
but that would be if the board so chooses. And they have to still meet.
so by pulling them out of there right now, or by removing that little section, you're not really hurting them.
It just cleans it up and it makes it a little bit easier for them.
Takes away those small pieces that could interfere with the development.
Yeah.
When we say complication, part of a parcel or a larger parcel potentially being halfway in the TIF, or a quarter in the TIF and the rest out.
If, I know it says financial impact to be determined. If you didn't amend it and the TIF would close without the $8.5 million additional expenditure, what does that mean to the average taxpayer?
We can certainly have an answer for the hearing. I know we looked at this and I can't remember what, it was a very minimal impact to the tax roll in my recollection.
Because a lot of the money goes back to the school district, the county, and NTC, and we get a small portion. We don't get it all,
No, you get like 40%, right?
less than that.
About 30%.
Yeah, at the most.
Look at what the.
Last time I know.
But shouldn't we know those? I mean, you want to, before we have a hearing, shouldn't we know what the project?
We will. if you'll have this before the hearing.
Well, if you, yeah.
You don't have to take action at the hearing, that is just, you just need to know that, I mean, we can push it off, it'll just be another month down the road.
Right, I guess I'd like to see the projects and also the financial impact if it wasn't, be maybe open. I just have a hard time saying this is what's happening in the TIF and we don't know what the financial impact is or what we're gonna be spending the money. I saw that one tentative list and some of those on that list, I was just like, I don't know why we would do that. I don't know how that actually helps our situation. It spends money, but I don't know how it helps from a development standpoint. But that's, once again, I'm only one voice.
Is there, you mentioned a list, is there a list of projects somewhere?
There's a preliminary list, it's already been edited at one time, I think, Steve was mentioning, shared with Steve, we could have put it in this,
it's in there.
in the packet, but
If you follow the link to the OneDrive, that's where
there's,
all that is.
there's still, cost to be associated with this, I guess, for example.
Would it be the mid
You can make a
for
case
example?
potentially to have a part of a well project or a water supply project of some kind, partially funded through TID 2, TID 1, but, those two were removed from the proposed project list when we met with, Mark, I think it was about July or June 30th even. So it was after I even shared that initial list.
My understanding of the possible projects, or any, we could assist in demolition, and site preparation.
Right.
Getting utilities in from the street, those kind of issues of assisting someone in combining lots.
Right.
But
that wasn't on the list though.
Well, those
are not gonna be on
even
this
generic,
infrastructure-
what I'm saying
generically,
is,
they're not gonna be on the infrastructure projects list. They're gonna be within the body of the proposed amendment in terms of, what the uses of the funds could be.
I know we've been talking with, Mark Roffers, we talked about, if a project's outside of the TIF, is there a cap on, what percentage of that project would even be TIF funded,
You have to make the case
Yeah.
for,
a pretty good case.
or whether it is benefiting the TIF, or land within the TIF. I mean, for example, we did have part of, well 7 at the time, now it's well 7-8, as a potential project that could be financed through some money through TID 1. I don't think, we have not proposed that be done.
Yeah, I would be against that.
So any of the projects we list are we're not saying that that they're absolutely positively gonna be funded. They'd be eligible, and there'd still be a decision to be made later whether or not, they came up and whether the board wanted to go forward with funding them.
Right, but I think that not knowing what those projects are, I have a hard time saying I want to amend it without knowing what we're gonna be using those funds for.
That will be that's the purpose of the public hearing. So again, we can put that list together for the next meeting if you want to kick it down the road. It's gonna delay the hearing date then, but if that's your desire, that's fine, you can do that.
I just like to know what we're spending the money on before we have a meeting on what we're changing. That's just my thought.
When does TID 2 close if we don't do anything with it? 2031.
But we're gonna be then asked, because we're gonna be developing a surplus and not spending the money, to then close it earlier. And the sense that we have from talking with the board is that we don't wanna do that, that we wanna take advantage of some of this capacity in the TID, or the capacity of the TID to do some of these things like redevelop land along Schofield Avenue, assist with that. I mean, there's a bunch of for sale signs out right now on Schofield Avenue.
smaller facilities.
Right.
And some of them are quite old and, from a developer's point of view, you can understand that you gotta spend, a couple $100,000 to demolish something and we could help them out with that. I realize you want to have specific projects, but let's face it, most developers are holding their cards pretty close to the vest. They don't want anybody to know what they're doing, other than the fact that it's all speculative. I mean, if they could predict that how much they were gonna spend and what they were gonna do for sure, they'd be doing it. But they're feeling out the water. What can it?
But so far, we haven't been very efficient or very effective. How do I say it, getting things developed. I mean, financially, we can be doing these things, but we haven't been successful to this point on doing it. To do a blind amendment with the idea that we have $8 million to spend on something in the future, whatever it might be, whether it's generic properties, whether it's the possibility of tearing down some generic. I'm just saying, I would like to know from a budgetary standpoint, what those monies are gonna be used for. I'm just saying, like, running a sidewalk along Alderston Street doesn't make sense to me.
But if you do this amendment, you're not committed to spending the money at all. You don't have to spend it.
Make a motion that until we have the financials, that we defer this decision.
Okay, we have a motion to defer until we get more financials.
Right. And as far as if you would close the TIF, what would it mean to the average taxpayer? Because you have the $8.5 million, but you also, if you close the TIF early, you could pass some of the tax savings on to every homeowner, or every property owner, I should say.
We have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Randall on the question.
And just as a kind of a follow-up. So then, also to keep in mind that if we don't amend TID 2, any thoughts of us being a player in any redevelopment along Schofield Avenue go away until 2031? If we're gonna do it in a TID, we certainly wouldn't do it under some kind of a.
We don't have enough money to help finance outside
So,
of TIF money.
because we can't add any more land to our TID, we can't create additional TIDs. I think going forward would be create smaller TIDs so that you're not gonna be so hamstrung by having such a large amount of your property or your equalized value in any one TID. So just a follow-up.
Mr. Cronin.
On that same note, I totally respect that we have, I think we should take a look at it. But I'm also of the opinion that we shouldn't spend money just because we can. And I think that needs to be looked at as well. So that's all I wanted to say.
I just wanna say, this is the perfect use of TIF funding. So this is what TIF, in my mind, should be used for. It shouldn't be for greenfields, it should be for redeveloping. And there are quite a few sites that could use help and are probably not, they're just gonna sit there. And prior to that, we hadn't really had a direction from previous administrations to go that route, so.
Well, just take a look at the number of little bitty lots that are along there.
Well, I can think of 3 right now, that would be perfect for.
Well, the other thing is we didn't, the TID 2 project plan did not provide
No,
this type
it
of.
was basically put together to give landscaping grants and facade upgrades to existing. Because we even had some redevelopment and it wasn't given towards Husheng took a building down and that wasn't used for that.
So
I respect that, but we also have is it like double the amount of land that we're allowed to have in the district right now? Isn't it, I've heard the number like 20% thrown around.
Equalize the value.
Okay.
The land.
It's more than the 12% allowed.
Correct. So I think we need to keep that in mind too.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there anything else in the question?
One more comment.
Go ahead.
So as I look at Schofield Avenue and the idea that we've made this commitment to help redevelop that, we put a lot of property owners in a very negative position because we've already changed the zoning. So they can't use their property for what it was originally intended to. So now they have a very limited opportunity to sell that to somebody for fair value, so to speak. And, where, you know, I'm just familiar with one person that's had several opportunities to sell his property and can't, because we, the village, have changed the zoning, which doesn't allow him to do what was done on that property previously. So I'm,
The zoning was changed
Haven't changed
back a
anything.
long time ago.
well,
Perhaps in the free to land use map, maybe.
so when you look at, the old American Auto property and Tony Marisi's property, the zoning there has changed from what it was. I'm going way back now.
Right, that changed back in the 90s.
Yes.
When we first did it.
Correct. That, yeah, it's nothing we've done recently.
Right, and you have to remember too, that was, at that point, I believe, there was a lot of industrial type uses. That was Highway 29. So there was a lot of different, yeah, and the way that they went about it back then was they did their comprehensive plan. And instead of allowing their comprehensive plan to make the zoning change at a later date, they mass zoned everything. And at that point, it was B3 on.
Right, and I agree,
Avenue.
but those properties, the way they were built and the way they would still function today would be in a more industrial use. That's where they would have their greatest value to somebody else.
Right, and those are properties that probably should be redeveloped as something else.
Exactly.
Right.
That's what Joe is saying.
That's what I'm talking about, is
So now if you
But I'm
take, yeah, exactly. If you take that ability away,
Right.
now somebody's gonna look at that property and go, geez, I'm gonna have a $200,000 expense
Well,
on this facility.
Adrian Otto looked at expanding. I mean, that was what he came in the first time, was to use that existing place, add onto it. It just wasn't, I mean, the life of the building is not, it was better for him to move, so.
When's the last time we've talked to Tony Reese?
I talked to Tony a lot.
Not last time.
Tony or TJ?
TJ was just here, within the last couple of months, and I also talked to Tony within the last couple of months.
About the property.
We're still on the question of the motion.
He called prior to the.
I had a similar conversation.
Okay. Are we ready? Any more questions on the motion?
So we're, just to clear, we're motion, there's a motion to defer.
Okay. Anything else on the question? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So we'll have another kick at this. Okay. Staff reports, under 19, acknowledge report read June 2021 staff approved certified survey maps and site plans. And also 20, acknowledge report read June 2021. I would suggest we take a motion to approve. Acknowledge, correct?
Acknowledge. 119.
By Garrett, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mumford on the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, so carried. Project update.
They're just on there expanding. Those are two
Okay.
projects that are going to come back around. Other ones have taken precedence.
Thank you. Item 22, next meeting date, Monday, August 9th, 2021 at 6 P M, the regular meeting. Remarks from staff. Mr. Donner.
I just want to, I guess apologize for not acknowledging we had the contact related to the portable storage units earlier in my feeling was a little awkward. I feel a little awkward now, so I'm sorry about that. Anyway, the other thing is, the building project's gonna be, we're gonna be seeing some activity on the site, the former Jandy produce site, which is now where we're gonna be locating the new municipal facility. Should be seeing some clearing starting this week, and there'll be a small groundbreaking ceremony next Tuesday evening at 5 P M. Should be the 20th. So.
Thank you.
So.
Jen?
I don't have anything.
Emily? Michael? Mr. Tatro? Remarks from committee members. Mr. Cronin?
Let's go home.
Gail?
Thank you for this, Jen, whoever put this together. Thank you.
Okay. Keep going.
I'm good.
Thanks for your patience and hopefully you ate before you came.
Okay, so I do have one question.
Sure.
We haven't been able to start at 6 o'clock for some period of time. Is there an opportunity to move something around to accommodate that, or is that?
That's his fault.
What? What are we talking about?
I was wondering the same thing. I
What was
was,
the question?
You wanna start the,
Can we start at 6 o'clock by moving the previous meeting?
Yeah, that's, in fact, what Shane was asking about getting more time to probably move closer.
or push our meeting back to
Yes.
6:30.
We can conduct our business in hour and a half. Because some big projects sitting in there, a lot of a change over there, a lot of a question on these projects in hour and a half is not enough.
Previously, we used to have these meetings on separate days. I mean, it was, you know, we're this way so staff wasn't here 4 or 5 nights out of the week to do meetings with us.
Trying to do the second and the third week, right? Kind of, right?
As far as, yeah, most of the meeting.
You know, we're trying to, or not meeting out the whole month.
Right.
For staff's purposes, but, you know, same with us, and especially with the agendas, you know, coming out sometimes late. But I mean, it's something that you should be looking at all the time.
Yeah, and I
bumped up to 4 o'clock instead of 4:30?
Well, you know, the 3 big ones is this one, Public Works and Board. So we just gotta figure out how to change those around. Sure.
So just along those lines, and Shane did talk to me after the Public Works meeting. And in the past, when we had a lot of project activity, we were meeting twice a month in Public Works. Board also, so I know our agendas have gotten long, all in a lot of places right now, so
Oh, yeah.
maybe
600 pages.
through committee meetings and maybe something we have to look at if we have a lot of project activity.
And
So let's see, maybe,
Mark and I are also on safer and.
maybe we alter, you know, the summer months.
The only other recommendation you could have is defer some of those decisions that are longer term to the winter months, when there aren't so many.
Yep.
Right, you know, I mean, generally your spring through fall is when you're gonna get hit with all these
Yep.
change orders. All of it, right, that, you know, during the winter, I don't think you get as many.
I think the other reason that the time is because some of the committee members couldn't be here before 4:30. And I think we're trying to be respectful of our citizen members. I mean, those of us that have been elected, we opted for this punishment. Well,
You know, I don't think we should have a back-to-back meeting. Public Work and Planning Commission, one after another one, it doesn't work. I'll go 10 minutes over my time, you point the finger at me, and that's not gonna work.
you ignore me anyway, Usheng, but that's okay.
Well, that's okay, yeah, that's.
I'd be okay with 6:30. I'd be okay with starting our meetings a half hour later.
Just think about the time that we're.
So you want to
right now,
get
it's 9:30.
You want to put at 10 o'clock?
It's not always this long. The last 2 meetings have been fairly, I thought, pretty well managed.
I said that to one plan commission, they're not too long, and it made a liar of me every meeting. It was 2.5 to 3 hours every meeting for a year. There's a lot of stuff going on here, especially when we've got a lot of projects in the works, and considering the time of staff it puts into this. I mean, it's really hard to struggle getting enough time to thoroughly vet the issues. And Husheng's right. Some of those are pretty big issues. The Public Works was almost $5 million worth of projects.
Yes, yeah,
It's a lot of money.
but we can't rush it. I
Can't rush
mean,
it, so.
only we can rush the project and put the stamp on and say, here it is, because it's gonna come back and bite us eventually.
Okay, any other remarks from commission members? Okay, item 26, adjourn the PC.
I move to adjourn.
Moved by Cronin, second by Mumford to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
You said that really loud.
We heard it now, right?